31. Irv?
Here.
Bridget?
Here.
Sarah?
Here.
Jennifer?
Here.
Deb?
Here.
William?
Here.
Anna?
Here.
And Sarah Bess. We are all present in the Irv.
Well, not.
All right, we call the
Tillman
Union
will join
26 to
later.
order. It is 6:32. So Sarah Bess,
Present.
Margaret,
Here.
William,
Here.
Irv, here, Sarah Marshall,
Here.
and Bridget.
Here.
Thank you.
All right, so our first matter of business is, oops, I lost it. An update from our search committee for a new superintendent.
So we are the co-chairs of that committee. So I'll let Marta Torres start.
Good evening. My name is Marta Toro, co-chair for the committee with Sarah. In January, you appointed a superintendent search committee, a preliminary screen committee, to review applications submitted to the search from McPherson and Jacobson, conduct screening interviews, and recommend 2 to 4 candidates to you by April 9th. On behalf of the committee, we are pleased to submit the following 3 candidates for ARB superintendent to you. A 4th candidate withdrew over the weekend, and they are in alphabetical order. Dr. Susan Gilson, Assistant Superintendent, King Philip Regional School District, Norfolk, Massachusetts. Dr. Erisilda Herman, Insular Superintendent, St. Croix, U.S. Virgin Island. Dr. Joanne Menard, Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction, Hollingston Public Schools, Hollingston, Massachusetts. McPherson and Jacobson have confirmed that all candidates wish to move forward.
For the record, the search committee received 10 applications and interviewed 6 candidates. And we thank all the candidates for their interest and McPherson and Jacobson for their assistance. We also thank all the committee members who gave so much time to this effort, as well as the community members who expressed a desire to help our schools in this important work. So we will let you know when we have finished our housekeeping tasks, such as approving minutes, should you wish to formally dissolve the committee. Otherwise, we have completed our charge. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. We have an update from the SNS.
So
Yep,
I think that the joint committees should vote to accept the finalists.
I think that's a great recommendation.
Okay.
So I will move we accept the 3 recommended finalists from the Superintendent Search Committee.
Second.
For the for the region. I'll move that for the region.
And I second it for the region.
Yep.
So first, I want to echo what Sarah and Marta said about thanking the search committee members. Thank you so much to the 19 search committee members who spent much time, many hours on Google Meet, meeting the candidates, talking to the committee, and it was really a wonderful group effort. And I think the time and effort that we all put into creating a large and diverse and representative committee served us really well. So I appreciate everyone who brought their full selves and their various lenses to the search. It was really quite a wonderful process and very well managed by Sarah and Marta. I'm going to vote in favor because I think I'm very excited about these 3 candidates. I just want to name the somewhat maybe awkward thing that Dr. Susan Gilson is a superintendent finalist, and she's also a finalist for the middle school principal position. So The two searches were conducted entirely separately. The principal search, the school committee has no purview or responsibility over the principal search, and that search is run by the district human resources, and the superintendent is the sole deciding person, the sole hiring authority. And the superintendent search was entirely run by the school committee. The district human resources had no involvement in it, and we are the hiring authority. So it might feel weird to the public, like, how did the district not know that this person was applying for 2 jobs? But that's appropriate and proper that the two were completely separate. And in fact, the search committee didn't know that Dr. Gilson was a principal candidate until it was announced to the public. So I think that, like, the superintendent should do what he thinks is best for the middle school, and we will continue with our search for the superintendent position. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Was there any other discussion? Okay. So we will vote on the motion. What did I say? To accept the recommendation from the search committee? Perfect. Bridget?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Jennifer?
Yes.
Deb?
Yes.
William?
Yes.
Anna?
Yes.
Irv?
Yes.
And Sarah Beth? Yes. So we are 8-0 to 0.
All right, Union 26, in terms of the motion to accept the recommendation to the search committee. Sarah Beth,
Second.
So it's been, was it moved by Irv and seconded by Margaret?
all right, is there any discussion?
Nope.
All right, hearing none, we'll move to a vote. Sarah Beth,
Yes.
William,
Yes.
Margaret,
Yes.
Irv, yes. Sarah Marshall,
Yes.
and Bridget.
Yes.
It's unanimous. Thank you.
So
Jennifer?
I think it would be appropriate to put out a press release regarding these three candidates. I have one drafted that I will send to Sarah Beth and Irv, and you guys can take it from there and send it,
Okay.
edit as you wish and send it.
Great, thank you. Any other discussion from our search committee update?
No. Now it's to the SNS.
Update from the SNS.
Great. Doug, do you think you could share the attachment to agenda item 1C? So the SNS met last week in concert with the search committees deciding on the finalists. The SNS met to come up with a recommendation for what the finalist visits are going to look like. I'm at the wrong document, sorry. So this is our proposal, and this is, again, something I think the joint committees should discuss and vote on. So we're suggesting a 2-day visit, although day 1 is entirely virtual, so we have 2 Massachusetts candidates. They can choose to come to town or not. Day 1 would be 2 evening virtual forums, one for the general community and one specifically for staff. So 5:30 and 6:30. Then on day 2 is like the big day with the person being in town. So our suggestion is a morning tour of the 4 elementary schools, followed by lunch at the high school with students, followed by a tour of the middle school and high school, followed by an Amherst area tour from 3 to 4, and then an optional dinner with up to 2 school committee members, dinner break from 5:15 to 6:15. Then another community forum, this one in person at 6:30, and then a school committee public interview at 7:30. So we can talk about all those elements. So the dates we're proposing are April 8th and 9th, and we have an existing school committee meeting on the 9th. April 10th and 11th, which is the Wednesday, Thursday of that same week. So that would mean an additional meeting for these bodies. And then school vacation week is in the middle there, so we'd skip that week. And then April 22nd, 23rd, which again, we have an existing regional school committee meeting on the 23rd. And then, sorry, that's an Amherst meeting. So Amherst we will talk with Amherst about shifting their meeting time. And then backup dates of April 24th, 25th, which is the Wednesday and Thursday of that 3rd week of April. So some other details. Travel expenses will be reimbursed by the district, so the candidate will pay up front, make their own travel plans, and then submit receipts to the district to be reimbursed. And the district will also cover the optional day 2 dinner if the candidate so chooses to participate. We're thinking for the forums. So for the community forums, we're saying any member of the school or local community, including staff, are welcome to come to the community forums, in case staff can't make the staff forums. But the staff forum will only be for district staff. Each forum would be moderated by a school committee member, whether they're virtual or the in-person session. So we will need volunteers for that. And so we thought there'd be like a 5-minute intro where the candidate would be asked to say a few things about themselves. So introduce themselves. What do they want the community to know about them? Why do they want to be our superintendent? And why do they think they're the best person for the job? 5 minutes on that. And then the rest of the time would be for Q&A. I'll just keep going, and then we can talk. You can ask questions at the end.
Yep.
So we've identified individuals to act as tour guide or host for the school tours and the area tours. And once these bodies approve this plan, we'll confirm with those individuals, as well as with the high school administration about lunch with the students. I haven't talked to the high school administration about that. But for the tour guides, so I spoke with Joan Temkin about being the Amherst area tour guide. Joan is an Amherst resident. She's a former Pelham school committee member. She's lived in Amherst a long time, and she's the current coordinator of the Visitors Information Center at the Chamber of Commerce. And when I talked to her about like showing someone around, taking the superintendent candidates and showing them around town, she said that's what she does every day. So I spoke with her, and she's open to doing it, assuming that we approve. For the elementary school tours, I'm pleased to say that Nick Yaffe has agreed to do the 4 building tours for the 4 elementary schools. He says he knows the schools really well. He knows the school leadership really well. He said he was honored to be asked and happy to do it, again, pending approval. And for the middle school and high school, we're still nailing down who would be appropriate to do those tours. I've contacted the middle school and high school PGOs to see if some PGO volunteers could do it, but these are details that we can nail down as April approaches. So as you saw, we have an optional dinner in there on day 2 where we wanted to offer the candidates to have dinner. And whether or not they choose to participate in that will have no bearing on their candidacy. On the one hand, we thought we don't want to just sort of like abandon them to go find dinner by themselves. On the other hand, I don't know, for me personally, I'm an introvert and all that peopling, like I would be happy to have dinner by myself. So we wanted to just offer the candidate the option to have dinner with up to 2 school committee members, and members can volunteer for that as well. So then for the public interview portion of the visit, we would ask the candidate to answer the same 3 questions, speak for 5 minutes on the same 3 questions, and then the school committees would ask questions. So the recommendation is that ahead of time, but like before the first candidate, we members would send the regional and Union 26 chairs and vice chairs what we'd like our questions to be. And then the 3 of you, I believe it's Sarah Bess, Irv, and William, who's vice chair of both bodies, will come up, we'll take all that input and come up with 6 questions that we would ask every candidate. Then then we can ask follow-up questions, and each school committee member can also ask their own question if so desired at that public interview. Candidate supporting documents, so every candidate's CV will be posted prior to their site visit, as well as a summary report of their reference checks. So McPherson and Jacobson did extensive reference checks on all of the candidates. They not only talked to the candidates' references, but they asked those people to suggest people they could talk to about the candidate, and they did that like 3 degrees so that they got a very rich reference report for the candidates, as well as doing web searches for each candidate. So that will be a summary of that report will also be posted prior to the candidate's visit. And then McPherson and Jacobson also performed a criminal records check and a credit report for each candidate. And since that information is private and confidential, we spoke with our attorney about this. It's not going to be posted publicly. But if those reports reveal no concerns, that will be stated publicly at the time of their interview. Then we would create an online input form for each candidate, so people could fill it out about each candidate and have comments and provide a rating for each candidate, as well as after the last candidate's visit, we would have an additional form so that people could rank or provide their preference of all the candidates. And then ultimately, the plan is for the joint committees to deliberate and decide on our preferred candidate at our scheduled April 30th meeting. That is the summary of the suggestion for the site visits.
Okay, well, thank you. That is very extensive. Okay. Questions, comments?
I had one question for, oh, I'm sorry.
Yep, go ahead.
I had one question from a staff member about, because we had discussed this in our public meeting. Would it be necessary to have two staff meetings, one for elementary schools and then one for middle school, high school, so that the elementary school teachers and their concerns, they would feel like they would have time to ask questions? So that would be my only concern, is maybe we could have two staff forums on that first day.
Okay. Sarah?
A question about the online input form. Is that to be used, is that just for school committee and Union 26 use, or any member of the public or staff? If you
No,
have
no,
decided. If you-
no, that's for any member of the public to
Anybody,
fill out.
okay.
Yeah, anyone to fill out, yes.
Or staff.
Anyone,
Right, anyone,
Yeah.
anyone,
anyone,
yeah,
anyone.
literally anyone to fill out.
Excellent. Okay. Go
Well,
ahead.
so does anyone have thoughts on two staff forums on day one? One for elementary and one for secondary?
I was wondering if you could have the 5:30 to 6:30 be like the elementary, and then the regional staff, and then have a break for dinner, and then have one later, or shift things to start 5 to 6, 6 to 7, and then, I don't know, it's,
So, I'm sorry, say that again, 5 to 6 would be elementary staff,
yeah,
and then what?
6 to 7 be the middle and high school staff.
Okay.
If then you can still squeeze in community one.
And did you say there should be a break, or no?
If they're going to be 3, if they're going to be 2 for staff and 1 for the community, then there'd need to be a dinner break in there, but. So that's one possibility.
So, for me, when I was thinking about the timing of these sessions, like there's no perfect time, and there's no time that everyone's going to be able to make. But I was kind of trying to take advantage of the fact that school committee meetings start at 6:30, and I don't think that's terribly convenient, but it's what we have currently, and people do show up, and people can plan for it. So that's why I tried to plan around that time. So that's why so I mean, I'm not opposed to having two sessions, one for elementary and one for secondary, and then also one for the community. I don't know that it's necessary. I think that in a full hour, hopefully everyone can get their questions answered.
William?
I was just say, could we maybe try to ask a broader staff input on that? If they felt like an hour would be enough time for them to ask their questions?
We definitely could, but also we kind of want to figure out this plan.
I think also there's community sessions, right? So all those are open to everyone. So if there was a question that felt like it wasn't answered or wanted more detail on at one point, you could follow up to the next one. Sarah?
So an alternative is, if the staff forums, you said there will be a moderator, yes? So that the moderator knows to make sure that elementary school staff, to achieve a balance, and not just like let the people go in order of hands, but manage the process a little bit.
I like that idea. Deb? Oh, I'm sorry, Anna and then Deb.
I was just going to suggest that if we move the staff forum before the community forum, then if the staff didn't feel like they got all of their questions in, they could stick around and go to the community forum right after that as an option.
Deb?
On a broader level, what are we seeking to achieve here?
We're seeking to achieve members of the community being able to interact with the candidates and hear from them and ask them questions. I think from the people that I've spoken to about superintendent searches in other districts, it's been like community session followed by a school committee interview, and that's all you get. Whereas I felt like we need to have more time and more input in this district, and we need to have a space just for staff. So, and the whole like virtual or in person, like I feel like hybrid events, just in my opinion, it's hard to do a hybrid event well. So that's why I wanted one virtual and one in person, not making them hybrid, to give people options. And again, I know that there's no perfect time. There's going to be days that you could do virtual, but you can't do in person, and days that you can do. But so that was the goal, is to try to give people options.
Your follow-up?
Yeah, so I'm sorry, but I'm still not clear on exactly the structure. It would help for me to understand better what we're trying to extract from these interactions. There's obviously the tour gives you the sense of the physical layout. None of these interactions are going to give you a great sense of the staff. So, I mean, there's a communicate, and they'll be doing research online. So is it informational part of it? Is it, but if it is to get input from the community and the staff, I'm not sure there's enough variation in the schedule as it exists to get to that.
What would you suggest?
Well, again, defining the goals. Is it seeking community input, staff input, administrator input? So then I'm not sure how some of these lines fit in with getting input from the stakeholders.
Sarah?
I would say this is a two-way process. I mean, we want to learn about these candidates. A lot of people want to get to know who might be the leader of this school system, but we also need to, that person is also going to be very curious about us. So I think it's a good idea to have time for visiting the schools and, you know, seeing what you might be overseeing if you take the job. I think where the input, I mean, people presumably, whether they're staff or community members, are going to ask the questions that are most important to them. And if they fill out this input form, if that's what it was called, we're going to get their reactions. I mean, that's how we're collecting the input, I think. So seems reasonable to me.
Anna?
So what I would say is, in any previous search that I've been involved in, and even watching previous searches, this is an extraordinary amount of time to offer the community and the staff members time with the candidates. It is an extraordinary amount of time to offer the candidates to experience the school system. And we are not asking the community to interview the candidates and make a choice. This is an opportunity for them to get to know the candidates a little bit better and to provide a limited amount of feedback on what their first impressions of these candidates are. They are not the deciding vote. We are the deciding vote. We need to interview the candidate carefully at 7:30. And we want the community to be able to voice an opinion, especially if they have a very strong opinion about a particular candidate or many candidates. We don't want to shut them out, but we're not asking them to re-interview the candidate.
I also very much like Sarah's point of someone is going to be moderating these things, right? So there's a, that is a good way to make sure there's a variety of questions asked from a variety of different people. So I actually think what is already presented here is great. So I think this is well done. Deb?
So then for the online input form, what is the value in asking people to rank the candidates?
To what?
Rank,
the ca-
rank,
rank them?
rank the
Does it say that?
candidates.
Rank?
Because the information still comes back to the committees, which can help inform our decision when we are making our final decisions. Sarah?
Yeah, for rating, it doesn't say, oh, it does, ranking. Because not every community member or even staff member is going to be able to attend all the forums, so I'm not sure we should ask for ranking.
Jennifer?
So the idea was to have a form available that you could fill out about one candidate, so that like right after you see that person's session, you could go fill out the form and just make some notes and provide a rating. We're not sure how it will happen yet, but rating and input for each candidate. So that you would submit one form for each candidate that you see. And then at the end, like if you are someone who has seen all 4 candidates, you may wish to give that input. You may say, look, I said positive things about all the candidates, but this one's my favorite. So we'll have to experiment with online forms. Like, is there a way to rank but not include all of them? Can you just, out of 4, can you just rank 2 and then leave the other 2 blank? I don't know. Or we could ask people. I mean, people don't have to fill out the ranking form if they only saw one candidate. So I feel like both are important.
William?
I would just say that I tend to find myself to overrate people sometimes. And then when it comes down to the end, you're like, well, no, this is really my number one choice, but now my ratings don't really like show that. So I do think there is some value in asking people to kind of rank them at the end. I don't know, I find value in that. And we can take that information as we each independently want to, because it's ultimately our vote to decide on, not anyone else's.
Bridget?
I guess I just would say first, like, thank you, Jen and Sarah and Marta, because the process so far, I'm just really appreciating the thoroughness and the scheduling and the consideration of the full person who's coming and the full needs of the community. So I feel good about that. I do have just one question right at the very end, which is, are we going to go into executive session? Because now we're going to be talking about rankings, et cetera, or will that be out in public that we deliberate?
Jennifer?
We deliberate in public. Absolutely. All of our deliberation will be in public. Once I think we'll have to figure out how this is going to work. We would deliberate, probably vote, choose one. Both committees would have to vote. And then we would probably contact that person and find out if they accept. And anyway, at the point where they accept, and then when we talk about negotiating with that person, then we go into executive session.
All right, thanks.
I think we probably also can follow up with I always get their names. McPherson
Yeah.
and Jacobson about best practices
Right.
moving from
Finalists to
the,
accepted. Yeah.
what happens in there. Because we do want to protect, their privacy and their, personal information that we need to, but also, like, they are going to be a very public figure, right? So, Sarah?
I would just note that McPherson and Jacobson has not worked in Massachusetts before, so we cannot rely on them to tell us what our legal obligations are.
Okay, we can follow up to make sure we are compliant with Massachusetts-ness. Sarah?
It's, I'm wishing there weren't an April vacation right then. I think it's really too bad to have, such a long break between the 1st and the 3rd. Did you think about making these 3 one-day events, do them all in 1 week? I mean, that would be brutal. For us, that'd be, 3 evening interviews or whatever. But anyway, just wondered if you thought about that.
Jennifer?
We did think about that, and then the committee members together decided that we wanted the candidate to visit all 4 elementary schools for various reasons. We thought that each candidate there's 3 candidates and there's 4, I mean, at one time there were 4 candidates in 4 elementary schools, but there's 3 candidates in 4 elementary schools. Like, we could have each one visit one school, but that felt not quite right to committee members. And then we could have all candidates visit the same school. That also didn't feel right to committee members, so subcommittee members. So we decided that we wanted them to visit all 4 schools, and that just sort of took up a bunch of time. That's like a half a day right there. So there was a time when we tried to fit everything into one day, but then once we landed on touring all 4 schools, that sort of forced it into 2 days. Or I mean, you know, we could not have 2 virtual forums the day before and just have the one forum the evening of this one day, which, as I said, seems pretty common practice for other school districts that I've researched that do superintendent searches. But I think we need to be extra. We need to give extra opportunities to our community.
William?
I just have a question, and don't shoot me. But if 3 weeks passed and we felt as a committee that we couldn't make a choice without checking in with them again, couldn't we arrange a virtual interview follow-up? If we really felt that, like at the end of 4 weeks, that we really needed more, or they were too far apart, or I don't know.
You mean come April 30th if we can't decide?
Right, because they were so spread out. Like, just a question.
We could do it. We could. That's within the bounds of legal whatever.
If
We
wanted
could.
to do a quick follow-up with all 3 on the same night, we could arrange that at a later time if we felt that we needed that.
Yeah, we could.
I also, I'm bearing in mind that McPherson and Jacobson repeatedly emphasized the need for speed. You know, we're probably not the only job that these folks are considering. So I wonder, and you know, and we can't do anything about the break, but if we can, if the 3rd candidate comes on the 22nd and the 23rd, can we decide at the end of the week, of that week, and not wait?
Jennifer?
I mean, I guess I would want to give the community the opportunity to submit their input about that 3rd candidate. And if they just went to the community forum on the 23rd and then we interview that person, we haven't had time for the community to give input on that person, was my only concern.
Well, that's a Monday and Tuesday.
Yes.
So the 26th must be Friday.
Yes, and we
So
do have the
could meet-
backup dates.
Yeah, yeah, if the candidates aren't coming on the backup dates, then if we could meet at the end of the week, that would speed things up a little bit.
For the committees to meet on the Friday the 26th rather
Or
than the 30th?
Or Thursday the 25th, or Wednesday the 24th. Those are our backup dates, 24th and the 25th. Backup dates in case any of the candidates
Right.
can't. Yeah.
Right. But if we meet on the 24th or the 20, right, that's not a lot of time to
Yeah, for
receive
community to submit
feedback and to
information.
actually process it.
Yeah. I'll say that
Jennifer?
our original timeline and the timeline that was published in the job listing said that we would make our decision by mid-April. And now we're doing it April 30th, which is not bad actually in terms of all that we went through to get here. I agree speed is important, but I also don't want to rush this because of that.
Okay. Yep, Sarah.
Just, maybe I don't need, could discuss this another time, it doesn't have to be during the meeting, but for the candidates, like 2 of them are in Massachusetts, okay. For the one who's coming a long way and doesn't know anything about where to stay, like, it'd be nice if we could have somebody either drive that person around or be a local host or something, so.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, even the local people, the Massachusetts people may want. So we'll arrange like handoffs for like Nick will hand off to someone at the high school who will hand off to the person who's going to tour them. Like they'll be taken care of, and then Joan will drive them around, and we'll pick them up for dinner if they like. We'll
Yeah.
We won't throw them to the wolves. All right, yep.
So someone could make a motion to accept
like
the proposed site visit plan.
I move to accept the proposed site visit plan as outlined in this document.
Second.
Who is Bridget? All right. So that's for the region, right? Okay, all right. Any further discussion? Nope. All right. Bridget? Yep. Would
Oh,
you like to
yes,
vote?
yes, thank you.
Sarah, how do you
Yes,
vote?
I vote yes.
Jennifer?
Yes.
Deb?
Yes.
William?
Yes.
Anna?
Yes.
Irv?
Yes.
And Sarah Bass, yes. So 8-0.
So, Union 26 will entertain the motion.
I move to accept this, site visit plan. If that's what it was called, site visit plan.
Second. Go ahead. Margaret seconds.
Any discussion? No further discussion, then move to a vote. Me, yes. Irv is yes. Sarah Marshall?
Yes.
Bridget?
Yes.
William?
Yes.
Margaret?
Yes.
Sarah Bess?
Yes.
It's unanimous. Thank you.
All right. Thank all of you for all of your work on bringing us candidates for the superintendent position. That was a lot, and thank you. All right. Hey, Margaret, you got something?
I move to adjourn Union 26.
I will second that.
All right. So it's moved in second. No discussion. All right. So, Irv Rhodes, yes. Sarah Marshall?
Yes.
Bridget?
Yes.
William?
Yes.
Margaret?
Yes.
Sarah Bess?
Yes.
Unanimous. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks, Margaret.
Thank you.
I'm going to be watching you at home.
Don't rub it in.
All right. Let's see. Right. So, chair's update. I don't have anything to update that I won't talk about later. There are school committee announcements. Jennifer?
So I have two things. First, I don't know if Doug is going to talk about this in the superintendent's update, but since that's later in the agenda, I'm just going to jump in now and say that regarding the new debt authorization for the track and field project, so this body, as you know, we voted to rescind a debt authorization, and then we voted a new debt authorization that doesn't specify the type of surface for the field. And I can report unofficially, because I'm not a representative of any of these bodies, that all 4 towns have approved the new debt authorization. I believe Leverett did it on February 13th, Shutesbury on February 27th, Pelham on March 18th, and Amherst on March 18th. So good news.
Excellent.
Oh, sorry, and I wanted to say one other thing. I wanted to just say something about the budget and the budget cuts and the budget that we approved earlier this month that has some educator positions restored. And so this is just my own statement that I wanted to say. We focused on restoring student-facing positions because we wanted any cuts to be far away from students in classrooms. But all positions in a school district serve students, and any position cuts or reductions are painful. So to the central office staff, the clerical staff, and the janitorial staff, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that we have to cut positions in your area, and I'm sorry if I sounded callous or uncaring and focusing only on the educator positions and not acknowledging the important roles that those groups play in our district. And the fact that these cuts are going to hurt and are going to mean a lesser experience for students in the school community. I see you, and I see what you contribute to our school community, and I'm sorry.
Thanks, Jennifer. Any other school committee announcements? All right. You got some warrants for us?
I do have some warrants. So I, William Scher, authorized by my signature in the amount of $831,151.25. for payroll, sorry. I, William Scher, on 3/20/24, authorized by my signature payable amounts of $369,808.91. General fund expenses of $368,533.91. Revolving fund expenses of $1,275. On 3/25/2024, I, William Scher, authorized by my signature payables in the amount of $328,998.13. It includes general fund expenses of $289,482.66, revolving fund expenses of $29,411.67, grant fund expenses of $1,908, and capital of $8,195.80. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we have no gifts. Approval of minutes. So we have, let's start with the oldest ones from February 6th. All right. Anything?
I move to accept the minutes of February 6th.
Thank you.
Second.
Excellent. Discussion, are there any edits? Okay. Bridget,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Jennifer,
Yes.
Deb,
Yes.
William,
Yes.
Anna,
Yes.
Irv,
Yes.
and Sarah Beth, yes. Excellent. All right. For the minutes of March 12th. Thanks, Deb. All right. I will move we accept the minutes of March 12th.
Second.
Are there any edits? I only have one. I'm not sure how Cara Bear spells her last name, but it's spelled differently in here too. So it's two different spellings. We'll just get that updated. Any others? All right. Bridget,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Jennifer,
Yes.
Deb,
Yes.
William,
Yes.
Anna,
Yes.
Irv.
Yes.
All right. Moving along. Excellent. Next is public comment. Are there any members of our public that wanted to have public comment tonight?
Good evening, everyone. Lamiko McGee, Dean of Students, Amherst Regional Middle School. First, I want to thank the Regional School Committee for your stand to support students and staff and keeping the money in the school budget. the AP promised that we'd fight with you, and we will fight with you. And I want to appreciate what Jen said earlier, that, you know, oftentimes we focus on, you know, obviously the students, but, you know, the teachers, but we don't focus on all the other staff who make this a wonderful school district to work in and to send our children to. So I appreciate that you mentioned that. I just wanted to mention a few things. We know we're in the battle for the bucks now for the budget, but I did want to mention something about the schedule earlier. I appreciate that that you took the time in the superintendent's plan, site visit plan, to consider that the superintendent or the candidate spend time with the staff and the community. I'll offer a suggestion. This is a suggestion from Mika and not from the APA and not from the staff at the middle school or anything, but I think that for the high school and the middle school, to optimize how many staff will actually be present, between 8 and 9 actually is a good time, because we don't have students in the building until around, about 8:50, I think. And so if you did between 8 and 9, that would be a great time for that. And then the virtual community, you could do all at once, and that way you could cut it to a day, and then you may be able to shrink the timeline, and then that would allow us to not lose any of the great people that you worked so hard to get to this point. So just some thoughts. Doug probably can add some more thoughts on that as far as the teacher work schedule. But I really, really appreciate everything you guys have been doing. You are my dream team thus far. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mika. All right. Let's see.
Hello. I want to echo what Mika said. I was going to make essentially the same public comment. Elementary 3 to 4. The way that you all have been conducting yourselves shows how much you value public education and a good public education, and we teachers see that. I guess I'm only speaking for myself, but I think that's the vibe in a lot of places around the school. And speaking on behalf of the language department, we also feel like we're a priority based on the way that you've been talking about us, and we really appreciate that. So thank you.
Thank you. All right. I'm going to try and play the voicemails and not mess it up.
Dear School Committee, I'm submitting a public comment regarding the middle school principal search. Dear School Committee and Superintendent, please hire Limco McGee as ARM's principal. She's extremely well qualified, and she has been an active member of our school committee for a very long time. The fact that she knows the ins and outs of our school issues and still wishes to stay speaks volumes. Please remember that so many out-of-town administrators have come and gone in a very short time. Our middle school needs continuity, dedication, and familiarity. Your vote for Limco McGee is a vote for diversity, commitment, quality, and experience. Thank you very much, Renata Shepard and family from Amherst. Dear School Committee, this is a public comment regarding school lunches. It has been in the news that Tyson is now going to use antibiotics on their chickens. Usually when a major company makes such decision, others follow. I find this very concerning regarding our school lunch purchases. Is there a way to avoid this harmful trend? Thank you very much. Renata Shepard, Amherst parent.
Okay. We have some updates from our policy subcommittee.
Yes. He's pulling up. So, you can pull up the, whichever one you pull up is fine. Okay. So a brief update, we had 4 policies on here, 2 for first reads. We're still, we did get the first edits to the council, and council came back with more edits. So we have started working on those, and we're not quite through. Lots of debates, and if you want to attend our next meeting, you can, and watch. So this is policy IGA, and this is a current policy that is already in the policy handbook. The only part that we have changed or added is in yellow, and it says including teachers within the appropriate areas of expertise.
Sarah?
I feel like did we look at a different policy that had something to do with curriculum? Because I remember discussing different language that I don't see here. So was there another
This is the same
policy?
one we discussed the last time. I was just trying to draw attention to what was already there and then what we have, the addition that we have made. And we took feedback and deliberated and talked within our group and are presenting this back. Any comments?
All right.
I move to accept the new policy on,
Policy IGA.
policy IGA on the introduction of curriculum development and instructional program evaluation.
I second.
Discussion?
Can I just make a friendly amendment that you move to accept the amended policy?
Yes, I move to accept the amended policy.
And I second the friendly addition.
Excellent. Irv?
Yes.
Bridget?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Jennifer?
Yes.
Deb?
Yes.
William?
Yes.
Anna?
Yes.
And Sarah Bass, yes.
Thank you.
All right.
Our next policy that we're looking at is a little bit more changes. It is policy BEDH, and if you look at it, we are only changing the parts that are in red. We have added the parts that are in red. The parts that are stricken are parts that were in the policy that we're taking out.
Any comments, questions? Jennifer?
I just wanted to explain again, this policy has been discussed for a while, and maybe it's been a while since we last looked at it. The policy as it is now, with the struck portion intact, was adopted during the period when the school committee was meeting entirely virtually. I wasn't on the school committee at the time, but my understanding is that the practice of showing public comments on the screen was adopted at a time when everyone was on Google Meet and one person would screen share, and on Google Meet on your device you would read the public comments on the screen. Now that we're back to in-person meetings, the subcommittee felt that it doesn't make sense anymore to display the public comments on this screen. I can't even read them. If you're in the audience, you probably can't read them. People who are watching at home probably can't read them. So it seemed to be a practice that doesn't serve the process that we actually have for meetings. So instead of displaying the written remarks, we are suggesting that the written public comment be attached to the meeting and publicly published ahead of the meeting. In addition, there's still the option of coming in person to give a public comment or leaving a voicemail if you want your voice to actually be in the meeting, as we heard tonight. So I'm just reminding people what that change is about.
I think we also, in the updates, one of the updates to this policy, we were able to include text messaging and the ability to submit public comment in your preferred language, and that the district will, there's some new software that can help do translations. So those were new additions from, I don't know, one of the previous times we looked at this policy also. Bridget?
I just wanted to think about, there's a paragraph here about, the chair of the meeting after a warning reserves the right to terminate speech which is not constitutionally protected because of true threats, etc., right? And I'm thinking about that in light of recent events in Amherst where town council has had hate speech as part of the meeting and whatnot, and I'm not sure if it's possible or even like how the process works, but I just would love if that could be something that was clarified and Sarah Best could be prepared for in case it does happen, like that we have a language or we have policy or we have some way to do something. I understand that there's certain limitations on hate speech related to the First Amendment, but there's also other things we might be able to do to protect against it. And I don't know which reading, first or second, you're on, but if it's something that could be like just looked into a little bit, run by council since you're talking with council, et cetera, it would be great, because I really would be so sad to see that here as well, but it would be wrong in the current world situation to not think it could happen.
Just to clarify, this
Yep.
is a second read, but
Yep. Sarah, did you have your hand up?
Well, yeah, I mean, I didn't talk to the attorney about this, but I brought up a similar issue last time about what speech we can prohibit. And it's my understanding that our state Supreme Court, I forget what it's called, has decided that, I mean, if the only speech that can be prohibited is direct threats of violence. And unfortunately, we have to suffer through hate speech if people want to talk that way.
Jennifer?
I agree with Sarah's interpretation. And in fact, the bullet point that Bridget is referring to, it's on page 2. It's the 1, 2, 3rd bullet point. It ends with, or contains obscenities. Are you on page
I think
2?
it's up a little further.
I actually think we need to eliminate or contains obscenities, because the previous language is about provoking violence, breach of the peace, incitement to lawless conduct. I think that Massachusetts Supreme Court has said those things are the only things that can be prohibited. You can't insist on civility. And so, I mean, you know, our attorney would tell us, would advise us to follow the law. And we could decide to have a policy that contradicts the law, but then we would be setting ourselves up for, the attorney's job is to protect us from liability and protect us from being sued. So we would be setting ourselves up for having a policy that contradicts the law if we tried to, by our policy, curtail hate speech or obscenities or incivility.
Sarah?
Yeah, and I would hope we would not knowingly approve a policy that conflicts with the law, with our state constitution or our federal constitution. I mean, I want to protect free speech, even if I'm on the, receiving end of it, as long as it's not violent.
I think we probably can do something in between, right? Have our policy be according to the law, and I don't know, before public comment, I've said things before about, a couple of weeks ago when we had a very full house, about remembering that we're all people and trying to do our best. And so we could probably come up with some paragraph to read before it is public comment, reminding and requesting people to be, polite and kind. While it is not policy, it is just a request, right?
comments?
Can I just clarify? Jennifer, were you suggesting that we should take out or contains obscenities?
Yes.
Okay.
I guess my question would be, does someone want to pass a motion to pass this without that, with that one edit, or do we want to go back to? Okay.
Jennifer?
I move that we approve the amended policy BEDH with the amendments shown at tonight's meeting, in addition to striking or contains obscenities from paragraph 3 on page 2.
Second.
Any further discussion? Irv?
Yes?
Bridget?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Jennifer?
Yes.
Deb?
Yes.
William?
Yes.
Anna?
Yes.
And Sarah Beth, yes. We are 8. 0. Okay, excellent. Thank you, Policy Subcommittee. All right. So I had added on here a FY25 budget update because I assume we have all heard from our towns in one faction or another. I know I have spoken with the Select Board and the Finance Committee in Pelham. And after a very good conversation with the chair of the Pelham Finance Committee, while they are not going to recommend our budget right now, they did not say, it is not a no, they just have some requests. They are looking for us to create a 3-year forecast that takes into account things we know that are going to happen here and roughly assume, the same guidance that they've given us for the last several years of somewhere between 2 and 4% staying in the guardrails. And then to have bring that back to another 4 towns meeting. And so we can continue working together. So there's, they feel like we have more of a plan and not just our hair is on fire every year. My words, not theirs. So I felt like that was a pretty good conversation. And I didn't know if anyone else had talked to their towns or heard from them. Anna?
I did talk to our finance committee. They do not feel like they can afford such a substantial increase in funding. But they also requested a 4 towns meeting to talk to, obviously the smaller towns all feel like it really matters what Amherst is doing. And so if they need to know what Amherst is doing to know what they are able to do. So they want to have a 4 towns meeting, and they are open to increased funding over what was presented at our previous 4 towns meeting. But 8.2% is a really hard reach for them. That's the word. So I think that we need to keep trying to increase our revenue sources.
I haven't had any talk with counselors since we voted on the budget. We'd gotten pretty strong messages that I don't have any new information, and I don't even know if they've referred it to Finance Committee. I haven't had time to watch the meetings. Deb, have you watched Finance?
I spoke with a counselor today. It will be on the next Finance Committee meeting. I think it is not expected to be recommended to be approved.
Do you know when they're meeting?
Not off the top of my head. I could look it up.
I guess it was either today or it's going to be next week. Probably.
Doug?
So I've heard from folks as well. I think Leverett's had a similar response relative to the current state of where they are relative to what you've heard from from folks reporting. I did go to the Pelham Finance Committee and heard the same conversation from the chair of the Finance Committee and the full committee. I did speak with the town manager in Amherst. I'm scheduled to present the budget April 1st, which is next Monday night. And so I'll hear from the full town council at that point. That's a standard, I mean, the first meeting in April is typically, after the 1st, is typically when we present the regional school budget to the Amherst Town Council. They often, just as a matter of procedure, take the actual vote on the regional school budget earlier than the rest of the budget, so they'll often vote it in early May or mid-May, which is, they don't vote the rest of their budget until June. But part of that's just to be in timeliness with the other 3 towns because of when town meetings are. They try to kind of fit in that same schedule and provide that clarity of where they sit. I think they also, the conversations that were probably informal that were shared with me was, again, a sort of, request for a 4 towns meeting. I think just for the Amherst, they also have what they call a budget coordinating group, which is a internal sort of conversation for the town of Amherst with the schools and the library and town council to talk about things like this. And so they're going to try to schedule that, I think, as well in the next week or so. As far as scheduling a 4 towns meeting to sort of provide some context and some future planning and some projections for future years. The date I've been looking at a little bit is April 20th, and there's a couple of reasons for that. It's not optimal because it's the end of the school vacation week. We typically do them on Saturday mornings. The other option would be like the 13th. The following Saturday, the 27th, is the first 2 town meetings. And so, and there's some logic to why suggesting that date. Partly to provide some information, have a conversation, and see where each of the towns are. We'll probably need to be a little more sophisticated in our meeting setup so towns can caucus a little bit and have a discussion amongst their select board and finance committees and school committees to then provide feedback to the larger group. So we'll present some information about trying to forecast, needing as much time as possible for that. So that's part of why the 20th is just to be able to do that number crunching between now and then. And we'll obviously endeavor to get those kinds of slides and stuff such out a few days ahead of time, if at all possible, just to give people opportunity to kind of digest the numbers a little bit. But the second reason for this is around the sort of mechanics of town meeting. And, so the Amherst Town Council has the most flexibility. They can schedule a meeting. They usually meet on Monday nights, but they can really schedule whenever they choose to. So they have the most flexibility. I think for the other towns, what they're putting on their warrant is going to be what you voted because that's what they have. However, while typically a town meeting is at Pelham, Leverett, and Shrewsbury is done in a few hours on a Saturday, it doesn't have to be. Amherst, when they had town meeting, routinely continued the meeting. They adjourned to a time certain, basically. They met Monday, Tuesday, and did they meet Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday nights, I think, most of the time? Anyway, they'd meet a dozen sessions in the course of, annual town meeting. And they continue business. And so what might be part of what we have to discuss is the mechanics of how to do it. If we have an agreement, or we can come to some sort of level of understanding of where to proceed, then the towns may take the action of not actually taking up the vote on that piece of the budget and continue their town meeting. That they can do to whatever date that suits them. That also gives us opportunity to sort of prepare a budget that fits within that guidance. So there's a little bit of logic to meeting on the 20th to see if we can get to some level of agreement and have towns essentially sort of extend their town meeting. And I'm speaking from just mechanics standpoint. I haven't spoken to any of the towns about their willingness to do this, their comfort, discomfort with any of this. I'm just speaking of the mechanics of how the town meeting can proceed. And of course, the question, if you have a motion on the town meeting warrant, is that if you make an altered motion when you present that, then it has to be considered within the scope by the moderator. So that's another conversation that we need to make sure that they're on board with. So, when you're taking a budget and you're making it smaller, that's generally considered within the scope. Where it gets a little dicier is if we go really very different with our assessment method, because of how it's currently phrased and in front of them. that could be a little trickier, and it'll be what it'll be. We'll sort of sort through that a little bit. But I think there's opportunity if we meet on the 20th and can come to some level of agreement that then they have a way to proceed at their town meeting, on the 27th or the 11th. Of course, town council in Amherst when they choose to. That's not to say it'll be that smoothly, or we'll come to an agreement, or anything of that sort. And we may be like, oh, we need more information. So it may be a conversation where it's like, okay, we need to sort some more things out. We're gonna have another meeting to kind of come together and talk about where we sit and what we can do and what we can't do and what's involved there. And so, I don't want to presume that we'll have it all buttoned up in a couple hours on a Saturday morning. But at the same time, I think trying to meet before the first town meeting, potentially talk through strategies of the operational steps, as well as have conversations about what we can forecast, what we know and don't know about our expenses over the next few years, what are our assumptions, et cetera, what that looks like, how that fits into each of the town's forecasts of where they see their revenues over the next few years, is sort of the next steps that we can take.
Thank you. Sarah, and then
So if the budget is revised at all in light of Four Towns discussion or whatever, we have to vote it again. And the
Correct.
assessment method before it can be voted on by any of the towns.
Correct. So if on the 20th,
So we can't work it out on a Saturday, because we would
not
we would-
officially. So even if we figured it out on a Saturday, you still have to have a meeting to vote the budget, and then have that available for them to then offer as an alternative motion at their town meeting. So that would be, and as you talked about earlier, you guys are kind of busy that week with probably a superintendent candidate for a couple of days. So the opportunities to kind of wedge this in are going to be pretty tough. But I think that's all part of the mix is sort of what can we come to, and what are options that everybody can kind of agree to on that date, the 20th, and then what are our action steps from that point forward as to when can committee if when can we give you a budget to vote on, meaning the business office, or crunch numbers put together, present something to you that you can vote. The towns are going to offer opinion mostly about the sort of financial picture, but they'll, as part and parcel of that, as is the case with you, they're going to have some comfort or discomfort with what that translates into as far as reductions to the programming or not. But I think we have to sort of run the numbers and see what they look like over the next couple of years. It could be a circumstance, where a bigger bite this year and then it's more moderate over the next couple of years, et cetera, et cetera. It just, I wouldn't presume anything at this point. I have my guesses, but I wouldn't want to make any of those until we really run some numbers, and that's where we're going to spend some time over the next few weeks to try to put that together. But I think, there's the mechanics of what happens and what you guys have to do, and where we'll land relative to the end of a Four Towns meeting on a Saturday, the 20th. We may not be fully to a place, but it might be at least to a place where everybody feels comfortable to say, oh, we'll continue our town meetings until such a date that we do have an opportunity to kind of run some numbers, get a budget in front of you guys, have you guys vote it, then they can offer that as an altered amendment, in an altered town meeting motion. So a lot of moving parts here. And some of them are the sort of logistics and mechanics of town meeting and how it operates, and some of them are the conversations about the budget for fiscal '25 and sort of how that plays out over a couple of years, and lots of other things.
Bridget?
Yes, so I had heard that that 3 of the 4 towns need to vote the budget, but if we change the assessment method, then it has to be 4 of the 4 towns. So I'm just thinking strategically as our committee, and what we'd want to ask the superintendent for is to try and stay out of the thorny area of the assessment method to give us a better chance of this budget passing. Does that make sense? Because we want 3 of the we would prefer 3 of the 4 towns than needing to get to the highest level of 4 of the 4 towns, if I understand that correctly. No.
Okay.
So can I,
Do you- can you
so
answer?
just to paint that picture, so to pass the budget is it's technically 3 pieces. There's the capital assessment, there's the operating budget, and the assessment associated, the dollars associated with that assessment, and then there's the assessment method itself. All 3 parts have to get passed in some form or another for us to actually have a budget for July 1. Because unless we're going to revert to the statutory method, we must get all 4 towns to agree to assessment method, regardless of what that alternative assessment method is. So if that doesn't pass, it doesn't matter what the numbers are, but they do have to pass. So in some place, there could be, an agreement about the assessment method in all 4 towns, but only 3 of them vote the numbers. That technically could happen, and we would have a budget. It takes the 4th town along for the ride as far as how that's, what their requirement is, because the assessment method sets the dollar amount they're going to have to pay. But it's essentially, we're going to need unanimity to get the budget fully passed. Because it's the assessment method is so tied to the dollars available to fund the budget.
Can I just ask a
Yep.
clarifying follow-up? I just want to understand it as best I can. So the assessment method that you've been talking about, that's not like agreed to across the board already. So we have to go back every year no matter what.
Even the basic way state law works is that if you do not use the statutory method, you must approve the alternative. Everything else is considered an alternative assessment method.
Okay.
So actually, if you read the lines of our regional agreement, it says a 5-year rolling average of enrollments. And that goes back to, like the 50s when we first put the thing together. It really hasn't changed over time, even though that's expressly hard-coded into our regional agreement. Still requires, because it's an alternative assessment, it would require a vote every single year to affirm that method. Now, we've gone to a different alternative assessment method, but it still requires that vote every single year.
Okay, thanks.
Jennifer?
So Doug, you said it's standard practice for you to present the regional budget to the town council at the first meeting of April? Is that what you
Correct.
said? So you do that every year?
Yep.
And that's just a presentation, they don't vote on anything?
Nope.
And so is it typical for the town council at that time to refer it to the finance committee? Is that generally
That's
what they
probably
do?
what they'll do at that point. That'll be their official step that evening, will be to refer it to Finance Committee, yes.
Okay, and then typically you said the town council votes on the regional budget in early May.
Yeah, they traditionally, one of their first meetings in May is often when they take it up, and it kind of depends on the year and what works schedule-wise for them and what's on their agenda. But they do take it up early just to provide affirmation to the district that piece is set.
Gotcha, thank you.
Irv?
Doug, when does the town manager have to present his budget to the town of Amherst?
His full budget goes to the town on May 1st.
On May 1st. So, given that, all of these other town meetings in the 4 towns have to occur before the town manager recommends a budget to the town, which is May 1st. Is that correct?
Not necessarily. And again, the manager may recommend a budget on May 1st, and then, of course, alter that as things change. Because oftentimes, I wouldn't say this happens very often, and certainly not with even the regional budget, but the Senate typically votes their version of the budget in mid-May or kind of early-ish in May, and so sometimes that influences what the town may choose to do as far as their budgeting is concerned. So there's opportunity for that adjustment after the fact, but he proposes a budget to the full town council on May 1st. But it's not dependent on the other towns having taken action necessarily at that point.
No, I understand that, Doug. What I know, and I'm suggesting that when the town manager presents his budget to the town council, that budget cannot be increased. It can be decreased, but it cannot be increased.
Yeah, I'm not sure as far as the town with the shift to the council form of government, whether the manager can go down or not.
Doug, I'm speaking, I was on the Charter Commission, and I do know that charter.
Yeah,
And that's what it states. The town council cannot increase the town manager's budget, but they can decrease it.
right.
Sarah?
The budget that the town manager presents to council does not include the regional school budget. They are separate. The town manager has,
No, it does. 'Cause
but they
it's
vote on it.
They vote on it early, but it's a line item within the
Right,
budget.
well-
So they'll have seen it in the full budget, because the town manager will present the full budget, which includes a line item for the regional schools. And they take that particular line within the budget and take action on it early.
Right, so it's in there, but it's dealt with separately. It will have already been, I mean, at least in the normal course of things, already have been voted on.
Correct.
Right.
Jennifer, did you have you're good? Okay. All right. Anything? Yep, Sarah?
It'd be great if we can get, the sooner we can get a sense, if not a vote from Amherst, the better. I mean, if they're gonna see this on April 1st, I would have thought they already referred it to council. Maybe it comes back to council on April 1st?
Committee?
To the finance committee.
So that it's
So-
officially not submitted to them until April 1st?
Oh, okay.
Because that's the deadline. I mean, obviously they know about it. It's not like it's a
Oh,
surprise
so-
or
so
anything.
if
But
Deb's heard-
they don't have opportunity to even take action to refer it until the meeting after the first, because of the mechanics of the charter. So their first opportunity to hear about it, but then also it happens to fall exactly on the first. That's just a
Right.
quirk of the calendar. But you know, in years past, I've gone and on the first, basically the first Monday in April, presented the budget. They then immediately refer it to their finance committee for review, and in addition to then what the town manager does in full on May 1st.
Yeah. I see that April 20th may be the soonest we can have another Four Towns meeting, but I kind of hope we know what's happening before then.
Deb? you
Amherst,
wanna
Amherst Finance Committee is meeting on April 2nd.
do- Irv?
Doug, I'm interested in what budget will you be presenting to town council on April 1st?
I'll present the budget that you all passed.
Interesting.
Okay, so we have some work to do
Yes.
as requested from some of our towns. How do we do that?
So it mostly falls,
Which,
so the reality is it mostly falls on forecasting and projecting out is going to be largely an exercise that the business office does over the next few weeks. That's part of why we need the time. It's not, we don't tend to look out that far, but I think it's an appropriate request, and it is necessary, I think, for the towns to make some level of judgment about what you did pass and then what's coming in the coming years. We're going to have to make a ton of assumptions.
yeah,
We've got 4 contracts that will be, ending during fiscal '25, so essentially years 2 and 3, which would be the 26, 27 years, are going to have a pretty hefty variability relative to what we think of contracts. We're currently negotiating 2 contracts that, will take effect July 1 if we can get them done. We also have, in that timeframe, on the Amherst side of things, they're opening a school in fiscal '27, and the impacts of the 6th grade, and that will play into the middle, will play into the region to some extent, by virtue of potentially, rental payments, if there's any economies relative to shared staff or costs relative to having more people in a building, all those sort of things are going to be part of the push and pull that we're trying to get some sense of. I mean, we got some numbers from a year or so ago that we can lean into a little bit around some of that, but obviously, we'll have to revisit those a little bit and make some, and there'll be fairly broad assumptions that we're gonna have to make. about contracts and cost of living increases and impacts of those and staffing levels and, all sorts of things. We'll look at enrollments. I don't predict, a huge drop in enrollment. So it's not, if we suddenly lost, 400 students out of the regional school district, that's a much different thing to consider. We're not going to have that kind of drop. But we can look at what our trend lines are. Does that, create certain economies as we go along in the next couple of years or not? We're going to have to at least look at that and have some idea of what that means and the implications of enrollment changes. And likewise, if we think there's some sort of growth there, that hasn't been our trend, but at the same time,
Well, we know a lot of our enrollment numbers, like, as a fairly good guess, right? Because 3 years from now, they're, the current fourth graders?
right, but the current,
Third graders? The sixth grade is in there?
well, the current rules around school choice change. So right now, all school choice kids in Amherst, Leverett, Pelham, and Shutesbury are automatically grandfathered into the regional district, which means the number of school choice students that we take in any given year is usually really a low number. The number of spots we have, I think, I looked over the last 5 years, I think the most we took in any one year was maybe 10, but I think it was more like 5 to 7. And there's many years we don't take any, we just don't have any slots. And so if we're in a circumstance where they're not guaranteed seats, which will happen in a couple of years, how we approach school choice will be an assumption we have to make, whether we have, what's currently required is that we have to do a lottery for all the seats. So we have to determine whether we want to, essentially open all the seats that are currently in those sending schools or not. That can make a huge impact on our projection of what our needs are. Because if, we have in recent years at the regional level had 106 students that are school choice, roughly. I could have that wrong. I'm doing it from memory, so I wouldn't lean hard on that number. But
No,
but I
fine.
mean, that's over a 5-year span, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, right? So it's, on a per year basis, it's not a big giant number. But if we suddenly alter that, then that starts to have a cascading effect about what and how big our school is and what we want to do, so that we start projecting out 3 years and thinking about, again, sort of options around that change to how school choice operates and whether people are grandfathered into the district or not. I think that, there's probably, as that deadline gets closer, there's going to be more motivation from some districts to say, well, can you give us an option so we can, make an arrangement? We'll see. Probably as a first cut, we'll just presume to continue doing what we're doing. So whether they're
Yes.
literally the same kids, but same number of seats, we can kind of carry that
Yes.
as our projection for the foreseeable future. But just another little wrinkle in the mix right around now and changes to how school choice works.
Yeah, that would be my recommendation, is just what we have, just pretend they're staying.
Excuse me,
Zach?
you'd also be projecting as best you can the revenue, not just the expense.
Correct.
Right.
All right. Any more comments, questions about our?
I do.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking as we're talking about this that that we're all saying and feeling the need that we know next year is going to be a rough year. The ESSER funds are going to be gone, et cetera. Like, I feel like we need probably to do like more year-round and ongoing discussions around budget and about efficiencies and those type of things. This might be for future agenda planning, or it might be a subcommittee or something like that, but I feel like this committee can't just take it up once a year and then pray for next year sort of situation. Not saying that that's what we've been doing, and I trust the people in our office staff, but also to like really just be very proactive on this. I feel like we have to be incredibly proactive, or we're going to be sitting here next year sad we took these jobs.
Did you have your hand up, Deb?
Yeah. Variations in Chapter 70 funding from year to year, what does that translate? I mean, how predictable is it? And what does that translate to in terms of our budget? Like the difference between, what's it, 1.4 something this year, and previously it was closer to 4, and what's, am I getting these numbers wrong?
So I'll say this about Chapter 70. With the Student Opportunity Act, that's really fundamentally changed how we're being funded, or the levels at which we're being funded. In other words, the state as a whole has pushed a lot more money into Chapter 70, although it has been predominantly to select districts. So that's meant for us, we've been, what's broadly called a sort of hold harmless district. We're getting that in the law. It technically says $30 per student above the previous year's funding. In the current year, it's $60. Oftentimes, they've done something like make it 60. There's been discussion about whether it should be 100. There's a whole host of things there. So this was a known sort of trajectory that it was going to take several years to bring certain districts to a level of funding and support that gave them, the level of support to provide the program for their kids. That's also one of those things I'm going to have to look to see when that 7th year is. It's probably in this 3-year window as well. It could be a circumstance where, in year 3, there might be a much more noticeable increase in Chapter 70 as opposed to, like this year it's 0.78% increase for the region. It's about, between $35,000 and $40,000 at $30 per. If they double it, it's like 80 grand. When you're talking to $1.7 million of cuts, it's almost within the margin of error what they're giving us. The other things that are really quite, variable, and it depends on, the economy and what state tax revenues are, things like regional transportation reimbursements. And there's been a thing that they've done in the last couple of years called Rural School Aid, which has been a nice addition, and they really bolstered it in the current year. And they're trying to hold that steady for the coming year, at least the governor's budget. So those are all, some things that have variability in our projecting, and so it also some of what we'll have to do is again, it's a bit of crystal ball about what the general broader economy is going to do. Because if the general broader economy is steady or growing, then that means that the state budget is likely to be steady or growing. But if we think there's going to be some sort of recessionary trend or downturn. I mean, currently in the current fiscal year, projections for revenues were under targets in November. They lowered the projection for March or February. They didn't meet those lower projections. So the sort of indicators for tax revenues in the short term are pretty difficult. So I think those are going to be part of the hard conversations the legislature is going to have over the next couple of months to say, will we have the resource to fund this fiscal 25, even the way the governor, the governor's pretty conservative in her budget, anticipating, less revenue. So there's going to be, some projecting in that regard, we're going to have to consider when you talk about sort of what are the revenue sources over the next couple of years.
So follow-up. So in all seriousness, if we have such a variability in the amount of income assessment that we're getting from the state, we have a reasonable sense of what is within the abilities of the towns. How can we project forward if we really just don't know from year to year those lines from the state? How can we tell
we have general trends. They vary year to year. It's rare at this point that they slash regional transportation. They finally gave up on that about 12 years ago. They used to sort of, it's a tight budget, and they'd say, we'll just cut regional transportation in all the regional districts, which there aren't that many of, but then they're trying to encourage people to do regionalization because there's some economies that are gained with that. Yeah. But, the promise from the beginning of regional school districts was like, all right, you guys got to transport kids over a longer distance. We'll give you some support around transportation. The last couple of years have been the best years of funding for that, but it was not uncommon 15 years ago that it would be considered basically a knob they could turn to reduce spending in the state budget. They don't tend to do that anymore. The message has been, made clear that when they do that, that's essentially a cut to regional schools that's out of balance with Chapter 70 adjustments. But so, I don't see those as, some of the other sources of funds we have, like, transportation being wildly different. It'll be how conservatively will it potentially sort of increase or not over the next couple of years. Will it match inflation? Will it be close to our costs? I think Chapter 70 is going to be the trickier one, and I think the key with that one is, while the Student Opportunity Act is rolling out over the last couple of years of implementation, what we've seen over the last several years is going to be kind of in the neighborhood of what we can expect from that, which is going to be, and we talked about this before, it's like when a major piece of your revenue grows at 1% or less, but your budget's at, growing it for more because of inflation or just natural pressures, you're going to have a funding problem, because you've got to get that money from somewhere else, and that's going to be, assessments to towns. So that conundrum is going to be there kind of regardless. But, what I don't know is how, there are some recommendations around, Chapter 70, and limitations on, increases in the budget that have been put forward. I don't know if they'll, whether there'll be any traction or not in the legislature to take action in the short term or for a subsequent year. Those kinds of things might make a big difference. There's broadly a limit on an inflationary cap that the legislature takes on most of all of its spending to 4.5% or something like that. If that was dealt with differently, for Chapter 70, that could change things quite a bit. So, we'll have to look at those different things and make some adjustments as to what we think might be reasonable to guess there. And there'll be a lot of, soft assumptions, to be perfectly honest, because that's always true. Even when we do just a regular budget, there's a fair amount of, like, what do we think is going to happen? We're looking at and starting conversations about, well, what are the things we know are going to have potentially noticeable increases? What is our health insurance going to look like? What is our transportation going to look like? Our contract that we currently have, next year is the last year of the contract. We'll put it out for bid in the late fall. Because of the amount of capital investment that bus companies make when they are taking on a new contract, because we have requirements about what the buses need to be, those can be pretty significant. From that first year of the contract relative to the previous year can be pretty significant. The year over year is governed by language we have in our contract, which is CPI based. So it's much more moderated and predictable, and can actually go down if there's if the CPI for Consumer Price Index for New England kind of goes down, which we've had that happen. It's rare, but it does happen. So there's that. So we're trying to for things that we have some sense of or have some trends or some history on that we can project, especially the ones that are big cost drivers like benefits, contracts and cost of living increases, that sort of thing. Those are going to be the ones that we'll spend more time on trying to be as precise as we can. Obviously we're projecting, but I'll just say this. So for example, with staff, when we go to do our level services budget, we take all the staff that we have and we say, all right, we're going to give them, they all get a cost of living increase and some qualify for a step. Well, steps a percentage increase in addition to the COLA. When several years ago, the number of staff that were at the top step, so they were only receiving a COLA, was closer to almost 70% of staff were at 70. We're not that, we've gotten younger. We've got more staff that get steps. So that pressure on our budget year over year is greater than it used to be because we have more people that aren't at top step. That shifted more like to 50%. We're going to look at those numbers closely to see what kind of impact that is. So when we think about, sort of budgetary pressures, and again, remembering biggest part of our costs are people. So there's salaries, but there's also benefits and those sort of things. Those are the things we're going to spend the most time on because they're the ones that are going to really move the numbers one way or the other. And those we can make some pretty clear projections of.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else? Do you need anything from us to do this?
Not at the moment, but if you get additional feedback from your town finance committees, select boards, et cetera, pass it along. They've been pretty good about sharing some of what they've thought of and what they've had. Yeah, share it, please.
Did you talk to mine? They wanted to talk to you.
They sent me a note.
Okay.
And I know that they expressed the concern about the assessment method, but which I haven't responded to yet. But I did get it. So if they're, you know, and that'll be part of the conversation on the 20th, but I can try to reach out before then. I'll try to as we move through this.
Thank you.
Does anyone know what
Sarah?
Leverett's opinion might be at this point?
I think they're actually meeting tonight.
They are. That's where Tillman is.
Oh.
Yeah.
They invited me and I said, well, love to come, but
Okay.
I'm tied up. Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
I don't think they are that dissimilar between Pelham and Shutesbury. Okay. All right. Moving on. So at our previous meeting, the 12th, maybe, we had talked about making a motion to have a liaison committee between the region and Amherst College. I think, Bridget, you actually made the motion. Do you happen to remember? I did not write down your exact language. Do you happen to remember what your? Did you write it? Anybody write it down?
I do have it, but I don't think I have it with me. But basically, the idea was to have a subcommittee of this committee to meet with Amherst College to consider not pilot or payment in lieu of taxes, but some sort of agreement with the support and partnerships, you know, with appreciation for past partnerships, but also
Yep.
building to a better future, something of that sense.
Perfect. Yes. All right. So, we need people and probably a direct, clear mission for this. Irv?
Are you asking for people to volunteer for this?
I probably shortly. I don't know that we're to that point just yet. Did you have a?
That's why I thought that's where you were, so I'm, go ahead.
Okay. Okay, so perhaps we should start with the mission and then move to populating the committee. Okie dokie. Sarah.
Could this perhaps be an iterative process? I mean, some people delegated to have a first meeting and just find out what Amherst College is thinking.
Make some
Like,
contact.
Yeah, we don't even know really the boundaries of this conversation. They may have already made some decisions that we would need to be aware of, so maybe it's more of go have a meeting and report back and then figure out what comes next.
Debbie does have her hand up.
Debbie Westmoreland.
Oh. Okay, go ahead, Debbie. I can't see you. I'm sorry.
Oh, I didn't mean to have my hand up. I'm sorry. I just put the wording of the exact motion in the chat
Oh,
that Doug should be able to see, I think. Or probably.
Nice.
thank you, Debbie. Move to create a negotiation.
Committee.
You guys read that? I don't know if I can make it bigger.
No, that's fine.
Let's do this.
Can you see it, Sarah?
Yes.
Sarah Bess? Excuse
Thank
me.
you. Yes. Thank you,
Okay.
Debbie.
Oops.
Anna?
So I think that the mission of the committee should be to reach out to Amherst College and discuss potential
There we go.
partnerships and funding possibilities, and to just and once the outreach has been met, I think we can also provide them with the ability to negotiate some potential ways of partnering with Amherst College, and obviously bring back any opportunities and share them with the rest of the regional school committee to vote on whether to accept those opportunities or not.
Jennifer and then Bridget.
Okay, so I have two things. First, I think before we can populate the committee, I think we will need to know what is this committee going to be doing so that we can decide if we want to join it or not. But I think the motion language is enough, is sufficient enough for us individually to decide if we want to put our names forward to be on the committee or not. I don't know that that's necessarily we need to talk about a mission statement that's different from this right now at this point. So my second point is just in terms of membership. So it says a 3-person committee. So I would suggest Bridget, because she's the one who made the motion and seems very interested and passionate about it. Sarah Bess, you had mentioned you've contacted or started having conversations with Amherst College already, so I might suggest that you be on it as well. And then if we got Amherst and Pelham, I was going to suggest, and then a third person from either Shutesbury or Leverett, just to make sure all our towns are covered. Not all, that wouldn't even be all towns, but just to make sure we get more towns covered and we don't double up on Amherst or Pelham.
Sure. I also agree that now that we have this, I feel I couldn't find it in my own notes, so I thank you, Debbie. So okay, and
Point of order.
Irv?
Yeah, point of order. I thought that we were not going to be talking about populating this committee, and there Jennifer started talking about people she wanted to be on the committee.
I think we were getting to there anyway. Would you like to make a comment about it?
I know that, but you stopped me, but you didn't stop Jennifer. And all I'm saying is that if we're going to do this, let's do it in a systematic way and do it that is fair to everyone so we stay on the topic and not stray from it.
Okay, yes, we now that have the exact motion language, which solves our mission portion, and now we can move on to talking about membership. Would you like, go ahead?
Me.
Yep.
Yeah, I would love to be on this committee. First, I have a deep amount of experience with this kind of a committee. And the second thing is that I definitely would be changing the wording in terms of how we approach this and developing a mission that was looking at our being able to put forward a particular ask to Amherst College. And I can say more about that later.
Deb, did you have your hand up?
I do. I'm not really sure how to integrate this into the existing conversation, but should I just, I started the ball rolling. I'm an alum, and I was the one who initiated the conversation with Amherst College and then asked Sarah Bass to continue it as is appropriate. So I kind of, I would say went rogue, but I really just wrote as a resident and an alum and got surprisingly positive feedback and information that I then was able to pass along to Sarah Bass. And so I don't feel strongly that having started the conversation, I need to continue it. From a bigger point of view, I value Bridget's experience and perspective, but I do believe that as a long-standing member of the town and an alum, that adds some value to my membership in that committee.
William?
I was just going to say, I agree with you. Are there any other alums on our school committee? Are you the only alum?
I believe I am.
I'm not. I went
Okay.
to Mass.
I went to Williams College, and it's a really big problem.
So just to follow up, I agree with your words. I think that is an important contact to have as an alum, and we should use that to our strength with our request.
I did, stick my class of '89 at the end of my name, because if there's no better time than to stick it anywhere, it's when you're asking your alma mater to help out its town.
Bridget?
I would just want to say, like, right from the start, Deb was a big thought partner with me in this, and I know it might not be the best to have two representatives from Amherst, but I definitely have put a lot of thought and into it. And if it were possible, I think an ideal committee would be myself, Deb, and then to have Sarah Bess, who's already been in conversations. So those are my thoughts. And, obviously any other committee member who has ideas or thoughts or proposals, like, they should definitely come to us. And if we had, meetings, they'd be more than welcome to join and pitch in. But I do have some hesitation if somebody was really strongly against the motion and wants to rewrite the motion that we passed. I'm not sure that that makes sense if they're on the committee.
Okay. I also think having Deb, having started the ball rolling and being an alum does add a piece to it. And I also think that I do think sometimes we need to make sure, like, all of our towns are well represented, but I think when it comes to something like this, like, we are just regional school committee members, and we are all here for the same school. So I don't know that our towns make too much of a difference at that point. Irv, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I did. I just want to point out that I am the longest serving member in this town. I've been embedded in this town, have known several Amherst College presidents by name, have been introduced to the Amherst College president by the town manager, have known several members of the staff of Amherst College because I interact with them. And I have more of the experience that one is looking for when you do this than anyone that has been suggested for this committee. All right, so I don't understand how someone says, well, if the person isn't on the committee, then they can make recommendations and consult with us, etc. That is different because the face-to-face and the strategies and the tactics and the things that one does before one even approaches is really important. And then what one does in those meetings is what is really important. And you cannot do it on the fly. It cannot be done by anything else but experience and knowing what one is doing.
Jennifer and then Deb.
So first, I actually didn't realize this is what we were going to be talking about because it says liaison committee, and I didn't quite clock that that's what we were going to be talking about. I was going to suggest that we call it that's okay, that we call it like the Amherst College Strategic Partnership Subcommittee. And so I would like to move that we appoint Bridget, Deb, and Sarah Bess to the Amherst College Strategic Partnership Subcommittee.
I would second.
Okay. What Amherst College
Strategic Partnership Subcommittee.
I would love, partially because I'm swimming in the policy thing, but I would like a simpler acronym, like One Amherst. I don't know. I just, that's what came up, or another one came to mind. What was it?
I think the subcommittee can be empowered to change their name.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's
Agree.
okay.
We changed the SNS. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. And then I would like to underline that my interest in this is kind of setting the stage, because really it's the superintendent coming forward that's going to partner with Amherst College in terms of the day-to-day, we're policy people. We can establish a framework in which these conversations take place, but without the superintendent, we're really not able to negotiate anything. So, you know, for instance, right now, Amherst College gives money for a position in the Family Center. That's really a superintendent interaction. Tutors, the Mead Art Museum, the Orr Rink, all of those things are details that we're not empowered as committee members to accept. That's not what we do. So to start a conversation, to establish a committee is valuable, but what the committee can actually do is not, I think, what we're.
Depends.
Well,
Depends, Sarah says.
Point of order. Just because there's a motion on the floor,
Oh.
should we deal with that first and then if we wanted to discuss? Because I think you're going back to mission or even things that we could talk about in our first subcommittee meeting.
Okay,
Does that
thank you.
make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
I withdraw whatever I just said.
No, but good points. Well, I mean, I think we should talk about it. I just know Jen made the motion and I think
Okay.
that's all.
Okay. I will say that there have been there are other subcommittees where it says superintendent or designee, right? So that we could, as a friendly amendment, add that piece into as our subcommittee. Yes. Okay. Irv, did you have your hand up, or is that a chirp from before?
yes, yeah, my
Okay.
hand is up. So are we taking nominations for this committee in terms of this process?
I believe there's already a motion on the table that has been moved and seconded to have the subcommittee consist of Bridget, Deb, and Sarah Bess.
Yeah, but there are, all committee members are allowed to have, be able to nominate someone. And that hasn't occurred.
Oh.
We should just take nominations and then.
Point of order.
Yes.
I know we do nominations for officer positions, but I don't know that I don't know that we have a standing process for subcommittee membership.
Well, if we have no process, then we can establish a process at any moment in time. But you can't populate a committee with members and not have those members voted upon by the full committee. And if you're
Indeed.
going to have members voted upon by the full committee, then you have to have a nomination process.
I think this is your call, Sarah Bess. There is a motion on the floor that could pass or not. That includes 3 members.
3 members. Okay.
And I object to that because there were no nominations taken.
I would say there were nominations, right?
There was
As
no
part
call for
of the motion,
nominations. There
they
was not a call for nominations. You can make that call right now, but there was not a call for nomination. There were suggested people to be on the committee, but there was not a formal call for nominations.
All right. Can we pause for 1 second so I can do some policy research?
Can we take a 5-minute break?
Yes. Let's take a 5-minute break. We'll come back at 8:37.
Thank you.
She did it in 6 minutes.
Amazing.
Are we back in order? Have we been? Are we back?
Yes, we can be back. Okay. All right, so here is our policy on subcommittees.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Subject to the, okay.
Okay. Uh-oh.
Okay. Yeah, Deb.
So maybe we need to make it a task force, because there's the open meeting part.
Right.
What?
What's the problem with the open meeting part?
So any meeting where we meet with Amherst College needs to be a public meeting,
If it's a.
if it's a subcommittee.
So
Jennifer?
the subcommittee needs to meet an open meeting, but I mean, I think the subcommittee could be tasked with figuring out how to meet with Amherst College. I mean, you could call an open meeting and meet with Amherst College, or you could designate 2 of your members to go talk to Amherst College, and it wouldn't be a committee meeting, and then those 2 members could report back to the subcommittee. Like, we've never done this before. Like, I think there are,
Okay.
so, I mean,
But then it
that's,
would still be a quorum of the subcommittee.
Yeah.
no,
Let's not make a subcommittee, let's make a
What is
Well,
the task
a
force?
group. A representative group.
Oh, very Debbie.
I mean,
Chair Bass, there is a clause that says, except when necessary under state law. I think it says, except when,
For open meeting law?
yeah, I just read it, sorry.
except when an executive session is necessary, but there's specific reasons to go into executive session
Right.
that I don't
Yeah.
think any of these would
I
apply to.
just don't
there.
think that would
Right.
count. Okay.
If
So,
I-
I mean, I'm just putting my 2 cents out there.
Yeah.
There's nothing necessarily wrong, or I think we should think about whether it would impede the subcommittee's work for its meetings with Amherst College to be public. Is there anything wrong with that? Would that necessarily impede the committee's work? Also, if it's a committee of 3 and a quorum is 2, you could appoint 1 person to go talk to Amherst College if you wanted to not have the meetings be public. But again, why would that necessarily be necessary?
I mean,
And
Amherst
so if
College
Amherst
might
College
have
doesn't, yeah, so then
feelings,
you could
so-
appoint, then you could just send 1 person to talk with them.
Is
Sarah?
there such a thing as a task force? Is there any other kind of group that isn't subject to open meeting law?
I'm still reading, sorry. Go ahead, Jennifer.
I just don't think we need to circumvent open meeting law. I don't think we necessarily need to create a task force instead of a subcommittee so that we don't have to comply with open meeting law. I think that open meeting law exists for a reason. We should comply with it. And, you know, again, I think these are things that the subcommittee can tackle.
Well, I would just say I'm not trying to subvert it. It's just if there is another thing that would serve our purposes better, that's all.
Okay, Irv? Did you have your
I mean,
hand up?
if the point is
Oh, Irv, we can't hear you.
avoid OML, what?
Can you-
Anyway, if OML is an issue, which it obviously is, and matter. To have one or three people with the college, Amherst College personnel and/or the president, and have to have that, make that meeting public would be kind of awkward in a number of ways. It just would not work. It presents all kinds of obstacles in terms of having any kind of meaningful discussions, either with the staff of the president or the president himself. And I think this whole thing needs to be rethought in light of this. It just is unbelievable that, one would go into conversations and say, well, if we're meeting with the president, this can be a public meeting without asking the president whether the president wants to be in a public meeting or the staff. It's absurd.
Doug?
So I'll offer the following suggestion. I think, just regarding open meeting law, I think any group that you guys form, whether you call it task force or whatever, arose by any of the names, still rose, it's going to require open meeting law requirements. And the thing is this essentially is a negotiation, even though you're trying to have conversations about building relationships and that sort of thing, it's essentially a negotiation. I can tell you that from the standpoint of like Amherst Town government, I think this is true in other towns with their town manager or town administrator. When they need to have these kinds of conversations, that executive is empowered to have those conversations that they bring back for approval by the governing body, like a select board or town council in this regard. So I think what we've done in the past and what has traditionally been the case is that you task the executive to try to build that relationship and execute those kind of agreements is often how they're handled. And I think part of the reason why is because, like I said, they're typically always a negotiation, even if it's trying to just establish, a relationship. But then also because there's give and take about the particulars that are not well served by being public at in the initial stages for a lot of reasons. I mean, so I think that there's precedent in some other, realms like the town manager's agreement with the University of Massachusetts strategic partnership agreement. That was done in consult with the superintendent, but was primarily led by the town manager. So I think that may be, more straightforward. But obviously, tasking the superintendent, that you can do because you guys are the superintendent's boss, and so you can make that a priority or a goal or any other directive you'd like to.
Okay. Jennifer, did you still?
Yeah, so,
And Bridget.
so Doug, you're saying that the subcommittee could task the superintendent with having these meetings with the president?
Yeah, if you
And
choose to,
that's-
but the
yeah.
full committee can as well. So whether you form a subcommittee or not doesn't really matter as much as the direction to the superintendent.
But if the full committee met with the president, you're saying it would be subject to open meeting law?
Yes.
Yeah. So, again, we're a public body. We should be meeting in public. And we wouldn't force Amherst College or anyone from Amherst College to meet in public if they didn't want to. We would ask, and if they didn't want to, then we would figure something out. So, I mean, my one option is to empower the committee chair, or the subcommittee can figure this out, right? The subcommittee can say, okay, we're gonna hold our meetings of us three in public, and then we're going to empower the chair to go meet with Amherst College if Amherst College doesn't want to meet in public. Additionally, maybe we could modify the motion. With the motion which created the subcommittee, we could vote a new motion or whatever to make it a subcommittee of 4, and then 2 people would not be a quorum, and then 2 people could go meet with the Amherst College president and not have it be a public meeting. I actually was thinking 4 would have been a good number, just because more bodies and more work, but it was so late when we were talking about this that I didn't want to add it at the time. So those are some options, like keep it at 3 and just empower the chair, or make it 4 and then 2 people are not a quorum.
Bridget, and then Sarah.
I think that the subcommittee could definitely send a designee, but I do like, because we've heard more expressed interest than 3, right? That actually one way around the situation, I think, could be to make a friendly amendment, or however that works, to create a subcommittee at 4. And there may be times when the subcommittee comes to to Doug in the committee and ask that certain steps are taken. But I think that, I mean, let's just be honest, like, it's a lot of work on Doug. There's a lot of work, but there's also so much community interest in this question that I feel like that we need to take it forward. And the regional school committee has a really different voice and meaning and purpose than the Amherst town government, who's negotiating separately. So I think it's important that we have our own voice at the table, and that we think about it, you know, more deliberatively, which is my thinking behind the reason for a subcommittee. You know, so yeah.
Sarah?
So I want to understand maybe what Doug is suggesting, that so if this committee asks the superintendent or his designee to meet with Amherst College, could we also say, and 2 of us are going with that person, you know, to all these meetings, so that we are there? And anyway, is that a possibility?
No, not if it's a subcommittee of 3, right?
But I'm saying if we didn't have a subcommittee, we
Oh,
could just say, all right, the superintendent, we would like you to start having these meetings, you or your designee, and Bridget and Deb will go with you.
I'm just, if I could just pop in.
Yep.
I'm just wondering a little bit about process, because we had a motion on the table. We took a break. We've come back to look at this. And now people are talking about maybe undoing a motion we already did, or adding something to a motion. It's getting messy for me procedurally.
Okay.
Yeah.
That is fair. William, you had your hand up. Is it very specific to the motion that is on the table before we deal with our motion?
In a way.
Let her rip.
Direct question to Doug. So Doug, were you inferring that if we had a subcommittee of 3, because of open meeting laws and exceptions to those, that you felt like they could have an exception to open meeting law if they met directly with the president?
No, I think the opposite is true.
Okay, they would have to be.
They
open
would
meeting
have
law.
to be
Okay.
open meeting
I just
law,
wanted
but-
that clarification.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's
The other thing that I think we should just check on, speaking of this, is that any agreement is essentially a contract. And I don't know that, and I'm posing the question, I'm not saying I have an answer to this. It's like, you guys negotiate contracts with the unions, the superintendent, period. I don't know that there's other, so I'm not sure you have authority to negotiate an agreement. Obviously, your input and your input and your advice, you know, is essential to that as well. So I think that's another sort of conundrum here as far as this topic's concerned. If it was going to be an agreement that was longer than 3 years, then you have to approve the length of time. So for example, we have a purchase power agreement with a solar array in South Deerfield that was for like 20 years, and the school committee had to say, yes, we will do a longer than 3-year contract. That's okay. The length of time is the thing that's under your purview. But the actual contracts you guys can negotiate are pretty prescriptive.
Okay. Jennifer?
I just wanted to say that like a subcommittee isn't empowered to act on behalf of the school committee anyway, and I hear Doug saying that the school committee couldn't even probably sign a contract with Amherst College, but the subcommittee's job is to make a recommendation to the school committee, so that, and the subcommittee can figure out, be the ones to figure out how actually would this work, how would we enter into a contract, how would the district enter into a contract with Amherst College?
Okay. Anna?
So what you're saying, Doug, is that does the superintendent have the power to negotiate, or is it just the business manager who can do that?
No, it'd be the superintendent. I mean,
But then the business manager signs it?
it can be his designee. So if the business manager's empowered to do it, but the superintendent can sign any contract too, as well.
Okay.
Can we look at the mission again, please?
Yes. Irv?
This is sort of really getting muddy here, but what it comes down to is that the superintendent is the one who should be negotiating, meeting with, etc. And if a contract comes up, the superintendent is the one who signs that contract. The only thing that I would say is that, all right, then you can have this subcommittee be advisory to the superintendent, which is it's awkward to say the least, but it is a way of having the committee have some role in this, but the subcommittee definitely would not be meeting with the president of the college or its staff. This would all be done through the superintendent.
Okay. All right. I think we should vote on this motion because I think we're pretty slippery at this point. I am going to vote down the motion so we can start over. Not that I disagree with it at its core, but I think we need to start over.
The motion that Jen has on the table to
Yes.
appoint the people, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, just
Yes.
wanted to
The
be clear.
motion to appoint Bridget, Deb, and myself to the Amherst College Strategic Partnership Subcommittee. Okay. Any final comments? Okay. Irv, how do you
I
vote?
vote along with you. I vote no on this motion.
Okay. Tillman,
Hello, everyone. I abstain.
Bridget,
I'll vote yes.
Sarah,
No.
Jennifer,
Yes.
Deb,
No.
William,
Yes.
Anna,
I'll vote no.
and Sarah Beth. I vote no. Okay, so, oh my gosh. 3 to 5 to 1, so the motion fails. Okay. You're, all right. Deb, and then Jennifer, Sarah, and then Anna.
So if we changed the mission to say explore, so move to create a committee of 4 regional school committee representatives to explore with representatives from Amherst College, long and short-term partnerships and financial contributions. No, that still wouldn't work.
I think if we change it to be a subcommittee that thinks of places in the region that would be good to partner with Amherst College about, right? Like something that would work for them. And then once we have some ideas, direct the superintendent to make those connections, because I think we cannot sign. This is a contract that the superintendent is going to have to sign. So I think if the subcommittee is the one that has some ideas and some direction to go in, and then direct the superintendent to do so, I think is more along the line what I was thinking. I think I hijacked Jennifer's turn. I'm sorry.
So now we're talking about, we've already passed this motion that's on the screen. And so I think we're talking about modifying or changing the motion, which I don't know if I'm in favor of yet. Because I'm hearing Irv say, or I'm hearing Doug say that the superintendent would sign a contract with a hypothetical contract with Amherst College, not the school committee. And that's fine, I get that. That's a very clear responsibility. But I'm also hearing that school committee members have contacted Amherst College, and Amherst College is willing to meet with school committee members. And I don't think we should say, I don't think we need to say that shouldn't happen, because we've opened that door or whatever. And I think that, I don't know, I think that the public is asking us to push this along, and we have multiple school committee members who are willing to do it. I don't think we should necessarily eliminate the opportunity for school committee members to meet directly with Amherst College, acknowledging that we're not the ones that ultimately sign a contract. So, you know, the motion was made and it passed, and now we need to talk about populating the committee. I'm not against changing this motion. I think we should talk, I don't think we necessarily need to.
Sarah?
I think it's fair to say we didn't realize the OML requirements for a subcommittee when we, at least I didn't hear anyone else mention them when we passed this. And I have no problem with any kind of subcommittee or committee, whatever we call them, except that we should, I think it's wrong, or maybe not wise, to set up a structure that Amherst College might not want to be working with, or, you know, work with us that way. So I think I'd like to know if we made it a priority, if we told the superintendent that this is a priority for us, does the superintendent himself, or does he have a designee who has time to get on this in short, you know, like right away, and start having some conversations? And maybe some school committee members go along. I don't know. That could be informal without having a subcommittee. What's that? But so if it is something that the superintendent needs to be involved in, is that feasible at this point in the year, given all the other things that need to be done? And he's.
Think about that? Answer it? I can move on. There's more people that want to say things.
I'll offer the following. After our last meeting, I did, and other conversations I've had recently, I mean, I had a conversation, it was a Friday. Was it last Friday or was it the Friday before? I don't recall at the moment. With the town manager and a representative from Amherst College, and, you know, in leaving, I think it was not last Friday, it was Friday before, because today's only Tuesday, right? So, you know, I would like to get back to a regular meeting time with the folks at Amherst College. And I can ask them the question about what they think would be most constructive from a conversational standpoint, you know, what's useful and productive for them relative to this. I'm certainly happy to pose that question. I was going to probably pose it anyway, just given the conversation we've had, you guys had at your last meeting about setting up subcommittee. So, you know, engaging with them on that topic is also, you know, part and parcel of what I would want to do, and I'm happy to sort of pose that question. So the expectation is, I'm, you know, going to try to work on scheduling something in the short term, just to, you know, continue the ongoing conversations. And you know, we can kind of pose that question, because you know, it's not a bad thing to have you guys at the meetings to talk about sort of needs and areas that you think are of most importance, or ways in which you think, you know, they could be most beneficial to the district, that sort of thing. That's not a problem. I think it's a matter of what's functional for them, and you know, from a process standpoint, to be, you know, in those conversations. Because I know, like, you know, for example, and again, I keep going back to it because it's a standing agreement that currently exists. I mean, when the town manager has a conversation with UMass, there's a few things in that are, and it's a little different because it's department-based, but, you know, he's had his fire department with him in some of the conversations, or his police department in those conversations. So it's similar to that in some respects, in that you get that expertise of point of view. And I think that's also something that they might be willing to hear your expertise as you know, elected members of the school committee.
Anna and then Bridget.
So I would like to consider scrapping the idea of a subcommittee altogether, because it just seems overly cumbersome in this particular conversation. I would like to task the superintendent and the committee chair and maybe one other school committee member to have a conversation with Amherst College to explore opportunities. I think that it is the most efficient method, and then they can come back and report what those conversations went like, and then we can move forward from there. I think that by creating a public body that has to meet according to open meeting law doesn't serve any of the interests. I think that it's just too cumbersome, and I'm not saying we are trying to hide anything. I'm saying we need to act quickly. We need to act with a lot of flexibility, and we cannot do that under open meeting law. And so this is a conversation. It is exploratory, and we need to task a couple of individuals to take it on.
Bridget?
So, yeah, I think I definitely see the challenge of the open meeting law aspect of it, but I think that I still feel very much twofold, that we need the voice and point of view of the regional school committee, because right away, and no offense to Doug, because those are the usual conversations, we went to Town of Amherst, and I love Town of Amherst. It's my hometown. I'm so proud of it. You know, but we have a distinct interest as the school committee of the region, and that's proven by the $200,000 negotiated with UMass, which the region only gets 15,000 of, right? So I, again, go UMass. So like nothing against those particular things, but I think our body has a particular interest, and that was my first thought. And the second one was that the public doesn't feel tremendous faith at this moment that our current representatives, who I actually feel probably are doing their darndest on this front, but to be a little more transparent and have it come back to an elected body in some way, I think represents the will of the voters, which we did hear overwhelmingly from, to make sure that these conversations are happening in a way that's a little more transparent. Of course, maybe not completely transparent. I'm not sure even about that. I think some transparent meetings might be a great idea, but some open meeting law ones might be, and maybe we go ahead and even try it, but I don't want the school committee to back out of this completely.
Irv?
I really believe that this motion should die, and that we leave it up to Doug to do the negotiations not negotiations, but meet with the college officials. And that if we do form any kind of subcommittee, that it be advisory only to Doug or the superintendent. And remember, we have a new superintendent coming in as A, and B, that there is not going to be any kind of quick action by Amherst College on this. If there is a quick action, believe me, we will not be getting what we deserve.
William, did you have William?
Oh, yes,
Yep.
I did. I was just going to say, if we change this to a committee of 4, and then could we send 2 people to have those conversations, and it wouldn't be a violation of open meeting law? So I think there's a lot of value in having representation go with Doug, and having that at the table. I also think it could be cumbersome to have open meeting laws. I still think if we're going to task 2 people doing that, that's kind of setting up a subcommittee, in my mind. So then it would be a quorum of that committee going. So I don't know if Anna's idea of tasking 2 people with doing something really would be appropriate. So I would suggest that we change it to 4 members, and then 2 people could go with Doug, or 1 person could go with Doug. But we would have a committee to kind of brainstorm and take ideas and move them forward.
Deb?
So what if we did everything? We did our committee, the committee's goal or the committee's mission would not be to meet with representatives, but to consider ways in which Amherst College, a partnership with Amherst College would be effective. Doug does his thing. And so we have our public meetings, we have our open meeting laws, we have our agendas, and we have discussions. He does his thing, we stay in our lane. Thank you, Doug, sorry. And maybe, yeah, a representative goes with him of the four, then, and maybe it's a different representative. It doesn't, the purpose of the subcommittee can be separate but complementary. That's my thought.
So I'm gonna make a motion if it's okay, or are there people on the list in front of me, Sarah Beth? Okay, so we would move to create a committee, let's strike negotiation. So a committee of strike 3 and put 4 representatives to meet with, I think we still will wanna have some meetings to, and then everything else stays the same, but at the end, to look forward to future partnerships. At that point, this committee will report out to the larger committee and provide direction to the superintendent. Something.
Is there any way you can type that on the screen?
Do you want me to type it?
Keyboard is, but you could type it right here.
Okay. I can
That's
be
fine,
over here.
it's-
Yeah.
Doesn't get that far.
All right. Well done. I don't know if
Oh,
the rest
okay.
of us-
Could you just make it subcommittee instead of committee? Create a subcommittee as
Just
a
at
first
the top.
sentence. Thank you.
Is that all that you said, Bridget? Is that how your intended change?
Yeah, I think that's it, and then the 4, and then, I'm not attached to the end part yet, so we could just talk about this, there's loads of hands up.
Okay. Let's go,
Does someone have to second? it?
Sarah and then Anna? What?
Does someone have to second that? Was that-
I don't think we're ready.
I don't-
Yeah,
I
let's
don't-
wait.
I don't think we're there yet.
Yeah. I don't think this solves the problem, because you're saying the subcommittee will meet with Amherst College folks. What, I would suggest that the subcommittee discusses long and short-term partnerships and financial contributions, and advises the superintendent, or maybe it accompanies him to meetings with Amherst College staff. I think that saying the subcommittee will meet with Amherst College folks just doesn't solve the open meeting law problem, and it's only a problem because that may not be how Amherst College wants to be handling these discussions.
Okay. Anna?
I would add to create a subcommittee of 4 regional school committee representatives and the superintendent or his designee to meet with the representatives from Amherst College. And so that then we automatically have the superintendent and members of the subcommittee meeting with the I think it's really important for someone from either the subcommittee or the committee, the RSC, to accompany Doug on these meetings to provide the regional school committee voice. And I think that by adding the superintendent or his designee into the subcommittee, we can accomplish that.
Jennifer?
So, I'm back on Sarah's point that the subcommittee can't be tasked with meeting with Amherst College.
Yes, they can.
But they can, but then all the meetings would have to be public meetings. So my suggestion is create a subcommittee, for regional school committee representatives and a superintendent designee. Don't type anything yet. Okay. To discuss long and short-term partnerships with Amherst College, to discuss long and short-term partnerships and financial contributions to the regional school committees from Amherst College. Yeah, maybe, so instead of to meet with, just to discuss. And then maybe like
Delete representatives from
because you might
Amherst.
want to copy it later, representatives from Amherst College.
No.
Yeah, cut that for now. To discuss, you can delete about long and short-term partnerships. Yeah, you can delete that about.
Sorry, the button's
And
on a different
financial
place.
contributions from Amherst College. Sorry, and financial contributions
Right there.
from Amherst College.
Okay, good. Oops.
Yeah,
Delete.
just get rid of representatives.
Yeah.
You're doing great, Sarah Bess. It's so hard. I find it so hard to type when people are watching me.
Yes.
From Amherst College to the regional schools. I would get rid of that. I don't think that part is nice, but it's that last phrase. And so I think it's as extraneous, the acknowledging part. And so, period. Great.
Yeah.
And so this just creates a subcommittee
Yes.
with the superintendent or their designee, and then the subcommittee can decide, and with the superintendent can decide who's going to go to the meetings, and it can be up to 2 people, without having to call up, without it being a quorum and having to call a public meeting.
Deb?
So the last phrase was put in at my request.
Oh,
And not that we need to leave it in, but my reason being, I feel like some of this is relevant because given the current conversation, up until recently, there's been a lot of Amherst College should statements or can statements, and not statements about what Amherst College already does. And so both in terms of asking for stuff, accepting stuff, I think it's wise and appropriate to include communication amongst ourselves, with the community, with our staff, about ways in which this already takes place. For instance, there's, I think, 10 Amherst high school students that take classes every semester at Amherst College for free. UMass doesn't give that to us for free, and other online universities that you can enroll in don't provide that for free. I think I mentioned this earlier, we have use of the OR rink, maybe not for free, but I believe it's a reduced rate.
Well, it's the rate they charge us. I don't know if it's reduced relative to others. It's less expensive than other ice time, I would say that.
I just feel like there's room in the conversation to include not just, can you give us money or can you give us more, but thank you for what you have done. And I know that there's a difference of opinion about obligation and responsibility, but that was why I wanted that phrase included.
Sarah?
I understand that. And I think there's a place for that message, and but this to me seems more of just like a charge. It's like just this is why we're organizing you and what we want you to do. So, it's really just instructions to us, not to the world.
But then can the committee do that? They can still do that. It just is in addition to the charge.
You mean when they speak with Amherst College people to remember to say, we are so appreciative of what you've done already?
To change the narrative, the existing narrative, to build on it, but to change the narrative. Or maybe, if not, then maybe it should be somebody else's thing instead of mine.
Jennifer?
Deb, I think this is why you should be on the subcommittee, so that you can put that messaging and put those ideas forward.
And I can do that the way it's written?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
then I'm good.
It's not limiting, yeah.
More discussion on wording.
No.
Jennifer, did you have?
Well, so we have a motion that passed, and now we're creating an alternative motion, but do we need to rescind the previous motion, or do we need to, well, I don't know what the process is.
I think after looking at the subcommittee from before, I think we can vote at any time to disband any subcommittee. So perhaps we should vote to disband the liaison committee, as I made up a name for it, and then we can take up this motion to create what did you call it, Deb? The Amherst One Committee?
You could also
One
just revise the
Amherst.
charge.
One
You
Amherst.
take this motion as a revision of the charge of the other committee.
Oh,
That would be what I would suggest.
That's clear.
well, that's easier.
It's just one vote instead of like three.
Right.
It's just a suggestion, but maybe because it's 9:20, I don't know.
Irv, did you have your hand up before?
Not anymore.
Okay.
So I move that we revise the charge of the to-be-named committee.
So this doesn't have to change.
Doesn't have to change.
I'm sorry?
It doesn't have to change.
That is,
Well, somebody better keep it.
Yeah,
If we-
we'll save it.
Save it.
okay,
Part of the video record.
Yes.
all right. So you are making a motion to revise?
Yeah, should I read it? To revise the charge of the subcommittee as follows. Moved to create a subcommittee of 4 regional school committee representatives and the superintendent or designee to discuss long and short-term partnerships and financial contributions from Amherst College to the regional schools.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Okay. Bridget,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Jennifer,
Yes.
Deb,
Yes.
Wilma,
Yes.
Anna,
Yes.
Irv,
Yes.
Did you get
And Tillman.
Sarah Beth,
Oh.
and Tillman.
Abstain.
I apologize. I started writing down the first initials of everyone, which is not helpful in any way. So our vote is 8-0 to 1.
Oh, sorry, never mind.
Okay.
Now you want it populated?
Yes. Are there any nominations to fulfill our 4-person committee? Jennifer.
I would like to nominate Deb Leonard.
Second.
We just nominated. Are you just taking
Are we
nominations?
just? I think all the nominations.
Yeah.
All the nominations. Okay. William.
I would nominate Bridget Hines. Can I nominate more than one?
I
Go for it.
So Anna Hurd and Sarah Bass.
Okay. Deb, do you accept the nomination?
Yes.
Okay. Bridget, do you accept the nomination?
Yes.
Anna, do you accept the nomination?
Yes.
I will also accept the nomination.
There may be more.
And okay. One vote. Irv, do you? Are you? Do you have any nominations? Oh, okay.
He may not,
Hello?
can you do a sound check?
Can you hear me?
Oh,
Yes.
now we can.
I have no nomination.
Okay.
I'm sort of stunned by the process, so no.
Okay.
Point of order.
Yep.
So we have 4 nominees, and there's 4 seats. So I don't actually think we need to vote. Just acclamation. Right? Or actually, we saw that the policy
I
says
think
that the chair
I-
appoints.
All right. So, as chair, I will now officially appoint Deb, Bridget, Anna, and myself to our to-be-named committee. Okay. Subcommittee. Yes, thank you. Okay.
Yes.
Superintendent's update? What do you got?
Let me share it real quick, sorry. So a few things to share. I'll sort of read through these. Some things that have happened and are happening. So Nat Woodruff, the engineering technology department head, worked with several female students who wanted to launch a women in engineering club at the high school and to apply for a Society of Women Engineers Club designation. It's a national organization, by the way, the Society of Women Engineers. Their application has now been approved, which is great news for the high school. And it's now part of a larger, well-established organization that can support them in building a club and making valuable connections. So it's like an FBLA or any of those other kind of organizations. So it's a real opportunity for those students to kind of connect with a broader organization, which is fantastic. Last Saturday, we reported on this a little bit earlier, but last Saturday, the Massachusetts Music Educators Association held their annual All-State Music Festival at Symphony Hall in Boston. As we told you before, there were 6 students chosen to participate via audition from students across the state, and those were, and I apologize to any mispronunciations of student names or anyone else's name for that matter, Snowden Blue, Mason Chinfrani Shin, James Hall, Willa Hudson, Sophie Michelle, and Cynthia Tian. The 5th Annual Arms Youth Activist Art exhibit was held last Saturday from 12 to 1:30 at Hawks and Reed Performing Arts Center in Greenfield. I didn't see the notification for it until Friday, so I didn't have a chance to go. I hope it went well, but it's always nice to have kids art exhibited in places other than just our own hallways, which is also great. I don't minimize that at all, but it's often great for those things to be out and about in the public. Let me roll through this a little bit. High school senior Talvin Dingra, again, apologies for name pronunciation, and Sarah Barbara Just, who is the journalism teacher and advisor to The Graphic, which is the student newspaper, were presented the prestigious Edmund J. Sullivan Award at Columbia University Scholastic Press Association Conference. This award is given to only one high school, one college newspaper, or team of journalists in the United States. So it's a pretty impressive award, nationwide award. And then tonight, while we've been here, our 7th, 12th grade orchestra was up in the auditorium performing, so I'm hoping that, the lack of a crowd here is because they went and did something a whole lot more fun and saw some students perform. So I hope their performance went really, really well, and that they had a good evening with their performance. And so I will then shift, I'm going to stop sharing this for a moment and touch base. I should talk to the microphone. I'll stop sharing this and touch base on a couple other topics. So we'll talk about the eclipse first. So on April 8th is a solar eclipse. We won't be in total, we won't have a total eclipse here, but we'll be about 92%. That will also be, just from a general Amherst sort of point of view, that's the day we switch the traffic pattern at Fort River. So, needless to say, I'm just giving heads up to folks that the traffic's going to change. It's going to impact the Southeast Street area, which is, complicated in the mornings anyway. And we're evaluating the, we're trying to do some programming. We're definitely going to do some messaging about, safety around the eclipse. It happens in the late, in sort of basically at the end of school. Kind of 2:30 to 3:30 sort of time frame. So we're still working through some of the logistics of what we're going to do relative to that, and it is a kind of once in a lifetime event. So we'll be in touch about any changes to what we might do relative to that. I know that the high school and middle school have been trying to do some programming. Elementary schools have been doing some programming, or trying to think about that. But at a minimum, we'll definitely share out the sort of safety tips, like don't stare at the sun or the eclipse. It does not take long for damage to occur, like a minute or less, very little time. There are safe ways to view it. We're working on getting specialized glasses. They look like 3D glasses. They're sort of paper and that sort of thing, but they are not the same as sunglasses. Sunglasses are not sufficient protection for your eyes, so I'm going to message that now. I'm going to message that in the newsletter. We're going to continue to message that. So we want people to be able to see it, we want kids to experience it, and we want them to do it safely. So we'll be getting out messages about safety and things that are happening in and around the school relative to the eclipse. But is coincidental to the date which we're making a change to traffic patterns around Fort River, which will impact how people get from that side of things to the high school, to other places in the middle school and places in town. So keep an eye on messaging in and around the newsletter around all of that. And then the last thing in my superintendent's update is that we're in the process, the royal we, in the process of reviewing the middle school principal candidates. They were in last week and on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and did a sort of full day experience with the school, both meeting faculty and staff, and a couple different sessions with parents, and spent some time with me, did some touring of the building. We're in a fortunate circumstance to have strong candidates, and so it's going to be a difficult choice. We'll be making that decision on who's best for that job based on that alone. Jennifer mentioned earlier the fact that there's a candidate that's a finalist in both this position and the superintendent's position. I'll evaluate as fairly as I can the middle school principal position as a standalone thing. And that should have no impact on this decision that you as a school committee will make relative to a superintendent candidate. I think you think of those as, they're different jobs, different things you need to do for both of them, and you should evaluate each of the candidates, with that in mind, the work specifically tasked for that job. So I'll do the same with the middle school principal. And decisions about that are not indications about their qualifications or abilities or capabilities in the other. And also depends on who else is in the mix too, right? So I did want to update you on that. I'm still in process on going through feedback forms and additional materials, and also just thinking through that choice. We'll also, along the lines of searches, finalists for the student services director position will be made public pretty soon. I don't think it's been made public yet, but it will be soon. And then we'll be scheduling a similar day in the district kind of interview process. So just a heads up that that's coming, and to keep an eye out for that. I hinted in a newsletter 3 or 4 weeks ago that there's lots of things and specific things with lots of impact that will be in the newsletter. So keep a close watch on that messaging, both for yourselves, but also this is for the community at large. There's lots of important details and things coming up that we want people to participate in or offer opinion about, and also then just to be aware of. So I think I'll stop there and see if you have any questions for me relative to those things.
Any follow-ups? Jennifer?
Doug, what is your rough timing on the principal decision / announcement?
6 to 9 months, I think. No. I'm kidding. No. That's a great question. I've been debating that myself. Probably next week, I'll probably try to have a decision.
Okay.
There's a bit of vetting stuff that we'll do, and I'm not sure exactly how long that'll take. It's going to take a little bit to kind of continue to think about it. I've got a fairly full schedule tomorrow and Thursday, so that's also impeding progress on some of that. But I want to be pretty thoughtful about it and go back over, feedback forms and that sort of stuff, a second time and reread. So I'm going to be a little deliberate, but not take too long, just for a variety of reasons. But it's probably next week, I think.
Okay. And then I have another question, which is, what can you tell us about the track and field project? I think we're in phase 1 right now, and we're also expecting cost estimates. Like, what can you tell us?
Do you have a quick answer?
I have a quick answer.
Okay.
So I actually have a meeting tomorrow to see where the designers are. Some things like revised estimates of price, they're, are very soon. So, probably in April, we'll have that conversation with you as a school committee. I think the second thing is there's a lot of preliminary work that they're doing, soil testing and surveying and that sort of work that they're doing, some fundamental stuff that they're getting, under their belt and sorted for the broader work that they're going to do. But estimates or revised estimates of things are going to be coming your way pretty soon.
Any other follow-up questions?
Sorry, I just have one follow-up question.
Sure.
In April, when we do get an update on the track and field project, I would like to request like a written summary of the progress that's been made so far. And in addition, regarding the cost estimates, like what method was used to come up with those costs?
All right. Any other follow-ups? Yep.
I have a question about sort of like the bullying form and the bullying follow-up. And I was just wondering, do you have an update on where we are in the online form functionality and how many bullying reports have been received and how many bullying reports have been addressed? And then do we have a process for students or teachers to submit claims that do not involve the in-house chain of command? Do we have an external contact yet?
I think that is an excellent thing for our future agenda planning. That is a little bit more than what is listed for our superintendent's update, but I can write down. Deb, and then Tillman, and then William.
Can we add to that an update on the student group POSH? Is that?
Wait, are there any more follow-ups?
Oh,
just
on that.
On
oh, sorry.
the things Doug has superintendent's update. Okay, now we can move on to future agenda planning. Deb, as you were saying.
Be great if we could hear about the status of the student group POSH, in particular, whether or not they're able to continue given that their advisor is no longer. What is the future of that student activity group, I guess is what I'm asking.
Okay. Tillman?
Before we adjourn, I want to offer that I can provide some information to the committee, not a discussion about recent developments relating to the budget and leverage.
Excellent. Is there any objection to revisiting that topic? You're up.
You can finish the agenda
Oh.
planning maybe then.
Okay. Any, do you have future
Yeah, I
agenda?
was just gonna say, April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month, so it might be something that we wanna talk about, or is the district, I was gonna ask Doug, is the school district planning something for that month? Which kinda goes along with POSH and everything else going on.
Okay.
And then I would also like to have bullying and
Have what?
that, like, really have that on the agenda and
Yeah.
have it early on the agenda so we could actually get to it, cause it's been a
Yep.
it's been several months and we haven't been able to get to that yet.
Definitely. Bridget?
I think, you know, we're coming to the 1 year mark of everything that happened in April, and that to have an update from the superintendent or the superintendent's designees or staff on where we are now in terms of progress on those goals related to just inclusion and protection for our LGBTQ students, you know, that would be a great thing to have on the April agenda.
Irv?
Yes, I was rather surprised. I had thought that the motion that I had emailed you on where it was going to be on the agenda tonight, but it was not on there. And I don't have zero idea why, since you and I discussed that it would be on this agenda for tonight. So, given that something happened, occurred between the time you and I talked in this meeting, I would like to put that motion on the agenda for the next meeting.
So to come back to the FY25 budget again?
Excuse me?
The motion you sent me was about the budget. So I thought you were going to bring it up during the budget
motion wasn't about the
portion.
budget, but it fit into the budget, but didn't make any difference. You know, Sarah Beth, you didn't post it. It wasn't on the agenda in any shape or form. I don't understand why it wasn't, since we discussed it. When a motion is made and forwarded to you to be put on the agenda, it is incumbent upon you to ensure that it gets on the agenda. It did not get on the agenda.
Okay. Any other future agenda? Tillman?
All right, so in Leverett tonight, the Select Board and the Finance Committee had the town budget hearing, and one of the items there was the larger than expected regional school budget request. Before the meeting, via email to individual members, and during the meeting, I tried to answer the many questions as best as I could. I won't recount all of that, but the outcome is that, well, there's 3 observations I want to share. One is they were absolutely insistent that there should be another 4-town meeting. 2, there was dissatisfaction with the regional school committee that it appeared the discussion around not cutting as much as originally had been projected came very late in the process. I tried to explain that was because we learned on March 6th what those imply. The counter argument was that in previous presentations of the during the 4 towns meeting, Doug had already projected how many teacher positions would be cut, and basically we as the school committee, in the view of some members of the committees that I mentioned, failed to foresee that would have significant impact, and we should have started that conversation earlier. And then the third one was that there was a large amount of discomfort around increasing the base budget by 8% or 8.2. I'm using round numbers here. And so what happened in the end is that the select board voted to put on the warrant for a town meeting what they called the lower budget, which is the 4% max, and an article for one-time funding that corresponds to the amount that leads to the budget that we approve. So they somewhat split the baby in some way. And basically said we want to leave it up to the voters to decide on that. However, I have no idea what the implications are in terms of process because this is now not base funded and I don't know what that means for the regional agreement for the next year.
Right.
So it was also very clear that during the meeting that they are flexible in terms of adjusting the budget and they're within the rules that are given, they're willing to, finagle the numbers up to, the actual town meeting. End of report.
Thank you. Thank you. That is great. All right. Anything else? All right. Jennifer.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
All right. Irv, how do you vote?
Yes.
Tillman?
Yes.
Bridget?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Jennifer?
Yes.
Deb?
Yes.
William?
Yes.
Anna?
Yes.